Good evening. This is Angela Jameson, and there's feedback, so hang on a minute. I think that's me. Let's start again. That's better. This is Angela Jameson. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission, Monday, January the 27th, 2025. Here in Town Hall, but also on Zoom, and it is 7 p.m. Please would the secretary call the roll?
Angela Jameson.
Present.
Sandy Redden here. Beth Bernali.
Absent.
Beth Sanford.
Here.
Dan Stepanek.
Here.
Phil Williams.
Here.
Priscilla Woke.
Here.
Don Mastrononi.
Here via Zoom.
Katie Oswelly.
Here.
Adam Ramirez.
Here.
Very good. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Ramirez to be seated in the place of Commissioner Brunali.
I accept.
And Commissioner Mastonardi, could you put your camera on, please? We like to have all the commission members' faces visible. Okay. When you're set up, if you could just turn your camera on, that would be great.
It's saying that, but that the video is just that you disabled it.
I'm sorry?
It says you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it. Oh, there we go. Never mind.
Perfect. We can see you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, first of all, we need to approve the agenda. Do I have any comments on the agenda? And if not, please could I hear a motion? Thank you, Priscilla.
Second.
Seconded by Sandy Redden. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then we have the minutes from the regular meeting of December 16th, 2024, which I hope everyone's been able to take a look at. Does anyone have any comments? If not, could I hear a motion, please?
Motion to approve the minutes of the meeting, December 16th, and the site visits.
Well, let's do them separately.
Okay.
Yeah, just
So motion.
for the minutes of the regular meeting. Okay, so
Second motion.
thank you, Adam Ramirez. So all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
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 So that's carried unanimously. And then the site visit minutes of January the 7th, 2025. Does anybody have a comment?
I have a comment. This is Dan Stepanek. I was absent from that.
Very good. So you will be abstaining from the vote to approve the site minutes, Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as was I.
Thank you, Phil. Very good. So could I hear a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the site visit.
Thank you, Beth Sanford, seconded by
I second the motion.
Adam Ramirez. All those in favor, please raise your
Aye.
hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Those abstaining? Dan Stepanek and Phil Williams abstaining, yes?
Abstaining.
Yep, thank you. So now we will open the regular meeting, and the applications that we have received, and if they are complete, will be scheduled for the February 24th, 2025 regular meeting. Application IW-25-3, 89 South Bald Hill Road, John S. McGregor, the fourth trustee. Secondly, application IW-25-4, 146 Onote Ridge, New Canaan Nature Center. And so now we should schedule a site visit to visit those two sites. And the tentative date that we've come up with is February the 5th at 8 a.m. Please can I see a show of hands for those who are available for that? Phil, thank you. Priscilla?
No.
Okay, not Beth. Sandy, no. Angela, I can make that. Adam and Katie. Don, are you available?
He was on mute.
I'm sorry, I think you're on mute.
I'm available, yes.
Okay, and Dan, will you be available?
No, I'm not available.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, we have a quorum, so let's go ahead with that. And I would just say, anybody who said that they can make the site visit, if you find at the last minute that you can't, please could you let Kathleen Holland know, because this is a scheduled meeting. We have to have a quorum, and we have folks that are waiting for us out in the cold to turn up at the two sites. So please let Kathleen know if you find between now and then that you're not able to make that site visit. Thank you so much. And Kathleen, maybe you could arrange to have a calendar invitation sent to commission members for the site visit. That would be great. Thank you very much. Okay, so next, item 7 on the agenda, we're going to open the public hearing for application IW-24-43, 82 Brookwood Lane, Brookwood Hills, LLC. So just before we get started on this, we do have a very full agenda this evening. So I'm going to propose that we devote about 90 minutes to the public hearing for 82 Brookwood Lane, and that we then adjourn the public hearing at an appropriate place after about 90 minutes and then resume it at the next regular meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission in February. We want to make sure that absolutely everybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to do so. So the order that we are proposing is, first of all, we'll hear from the applicant, and then I'm sure the commission members will have a few questions at least, and then we will ask the interveners to make a presentation, and then we'll open it up to the members of the general public to make comments and ask questions. And then finally, before we end the public hearing, we will go back to the applicant to give the applicant the final word. So this evening, with 90 minutes, I would say that we'll hopefully get through the presentations of the applicants and their experts, and maybe start on the presentations from the interveners. So if the applicants would like to move forward and take a seat at the desks and put the microphones on. Thank you. And when you're ready, perhaps you could introduce yourself and your profession, say a little bit about your professional credentials, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Zavatakis. I'm an attorney at Rucci Law Group. This is why I like to stand, I'm better. Hi, Amy Zavatakis, Rucci Law Group. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, 82 Brookwood Hills, LLC. This LLC is owned by Sound Beach Partners, LLC, and I'm joined by Jim Hoffman and Adam Scherer of that company. I'm also joined by William Kenny, who's our wetlands consultant, and Len DeAndrea back here, who's our civil engineer. We do appreciate that many of you were able to join us on the site walk on December 4th. And so you're sort of familiar with the site, but I do want to do a little bit of orientation before I turn the presentation over to Mr. Kenny. Do you want to pull up?
Yes, I share. You should just be automatically able to share. Not doing it. Let me check my settings, but
Usually it says screen.
It says only the host can share in this meeting.
Okay, now I just switch it off and then back on. Got one other thing here.
Do you want me to do it for mine instead? We're trying to have Bill share since he's going to be doing most of the presentation, but maybe shall I pull it up on mine?
A second. Let me try.
I'm gonna make you the co-host. So you'll be able to share. I don't know why that's not working.
Be on my end.
Okay, so I'm gonna make you the co-host, but before you leave, you gotta get that. back. So that you should be able to.
So while we're working on this, I'll try to start. I think that you all have the printout that I handed out that has the first few slides, which are less exciting anyway. So the site's just under 32 acres located off of Brookwood Lane. It's currently improved with a number of structures, a number of driveways, and a man-made pond towards the center of the property. The second slide that is part of the presentation is a topographic map of the whole area. And what you can see from that is that the property slopes up rather significantly towards Brookwood Lane, and then also slopes up rather significantly towards Smith Ridge. So the lowest point of this property lowest point of the area is this property, and really even lower as you go down towards the south of the property towards the New Canaan Field Club. So the application you have before you today is for the subdivision of the property. And that subdivision application has been submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission. When we first started discussing the subdivision of this property with the town back in August of last year, that was actually even before my clients had completed the purchase of the property. I know that you all may be familiar with the property from some applications back in 2023 about a farm use on the property. We've since purchased the property from that owner. So from the start, obviously there are a number of wetlands on the property. It's a sensitive area. We wanted to see how we could develop this parcel, but protect these environmental features. So as an example, when we first were looking at this, the thought was to use, if you're coming in along Brookwood, there's a driveway to the existing guest cottage there. And then the second driveway is the main gate, which is where we came in when we did our site visit. At first, we were thinking about perhaps using that first driveway as the main entrance, since it's sort of an easier slope into the property. And the discussion we had with Kathleen at that time was, since that area was gravel, there was some pretty significant wetlands over there, it would be better for the property to remove that driveway and actually rehabilitate the wetlands in that area. So that's part of what you see in the application we're submitting now. But conversely, we did feel that keeping that existing shared driveway and turning it into a shared driveway for the majority of lots in the subdivision would be the best way to not completely tear up the whole area and end up tearing up trees and things in other parts of the property to put in various driveways and access ways. So one thing I do want to be clear is that what we're proposing today just has to do with this shared driveway. The driveway is expanding from the current 14 feet to 18 feet at the request of the fire marshal, so that it's wide enough because of the number of homes that will be serviced off of it. We're not proposing any development of any individual parcels. To the extent that there are wetlands shown on any of the parcels that are in the proposed subdivision, those lots would need to come before you before they're developed. We do show some potential locations for houses and individual driveways on the lots. That's just to show that it is possible to build a house on these lots the way that we've laid them out. We don't anticipate that those will be the houses that will be built there. We have no idea. Someone could buy 2 lots and build 1 house. It's really up to whoever actually develops the house. But for purposes of the subdivision application, we did need to show where a house could go, septic, well, and driveway locations. And I will note that the septic has been approved by the Department of Health. Driveways have been approved, and the shared driveway has been approved by the town engineer. So like I said, we've tried to design to the extent the driveway did need to be expanded, we've tried to design it to minimize the encroachments into the wetlands. We did consider alternative subdivision layouts that would not involve expanding this driveway, but as I mentioned at the beginning, we really felt that that would actually be more disruptive to this lot and to the environment because it would require more removal of trees, more areas of asphalt driveways. And I should note, and I don't know how many of the neighbor letters you all have already had a chance to read, but when I was going through them, there seemed to be a theme in a few of them that this parcel could only be 6-lot subdivision. I don't know where that information came from. That's not something that's in the record before you or that I've ever seen. I have seen possible developments that are more lots. I think this is, all of these lots are oversized for the zone in which they're in. So I think we've tried to balance out, again, development, but protecting the property. I'm going to turn everything over to Mr. Kenny now, although I may have to put the slides up now because he needs them more than I did. But he's going to talk to you about about the driveway, what we're going to be doing to enhance the existing wetlands. There'll actually be some new wetlands areas created. And all of this will be done without any significant impacts to the wetlands as defined in your regulations. Where are you?
Angela, this is Dan. Are we supposed to be getting the graphics and looking at those slides in the map? out here?
Well, we have been given paper copies of the
Oh, here it goes.
slides.
Dan, they were having a technical problem, so I think we are getting there now. Let's
Okay,
see. if,
okay.
Yeah, so you are correct. Hold on just a minute.
My apologies. I know that was more difficult for those of you that aren't here in person, but
I did check with our technical folks and they said all our settings are correct on my end, Bill, so sorry. I'm afraid it's on your end. And Amy, if you have it on your,
I've just got to log into the Zoom.
okay.
Give me just a minute. I did the wrong thing first.
Oh, looks like success.
So then, Bill, did you stop sharing? Or stop co-host?
I think I may have logged out.
We'll make sure we get him out later. Why don't we, I don't want to take everyone's, I know we're taking a lot of time as it is.
I don't think Don's there you go. That's good. I don't think Don's getting it either. But now he may.
Yep, you should all be seeing the slides at this point.
So here, this is the existing conditions survey that I mentioned just to show the layout of the existing lot.
Yep,
Then this is the topographic map, so you can see the low point
Got it,
on this
got
lot.
it. Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
Thanks all for your patience.
thank
All right.
you.
Bill, you'll have to tell me
Sure.
when you want me to go.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates in Fairfield. I am a professional wetland scientist, soil scientist, and landscape architect. We were retained to help with this project in a number of different ways. Initially, we were retained a couple of years ago to go out and map the wetlands on the property, which we did. And then more recently, we were asked to expand that work that we did reviewing existing conditions and not just look at where the wetlands are, but their conditions and functions, and then help with the project design and help to develop a plan that we thought would have a net benefit, our professional opinion would have a net benefit when the project, at the end of the project. So we work closely with the SBP Homes and with DeAndrea's Associates and with Amy in developing this plan. And based on our review of existing and proposed conditions, it is our professional opinion, in summary, that there will be a net benefit to the wetlands on the property. The wetlands will be expanded and their functions will be improved in certain areas. So you have a net increase in area and a net increase in function. This evening, I'd like to review with you. We'll go first through existing conditions at the property and then go through the proposed conditions and look at the impacts and then look at mitigation that's being proposed. So we have the existing conditions map. Now we'll go to the next map with the. So this map that shows both existing and proposed conditions. North is to the right and south is to the left. The property has had significant alterations over the many years. The home was built, I think the existing home was built in sometime around 1938. Maybe we have an aerial. Keep forward the other direction, please. That's the next one. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Okay, there we go.
Oh, wait, did I open the wrong one? Is that the one?
Aerial photo from 1934. It shows the property, a second growth, mostly a second growth forest with some pasture in the southern end of the property. On this image, north is pretty much to the top of the page and south is to the bottom. You can see the top of the aerial photo, a little bit of the country club to the north there. And then, yes, the property below that. And at that time, there were no significant improvements on the property, but shortly thereafter this photo, a significant amount of improvements were made. And that included quite a bit of work that altered the wetlands and streams on the property. We can start to go through that. Here's an image that has a US topographic map, USGS topographic map, as well as on the right is a 1951 aerial photo. And so you start to see the improvements to the property with these images, particularly on the left-hand side, you have the estate house on the property on the western side. And then there's the small pond in the middle. And on the down the eastern side, you can see the shared driveway that comes in. And at that time, it's pretty interesting. That driveway extended all the way down to the Ridge Road, and that which today goes through the field club in that area. But I believe at that time, it was probably a primary entrance to the estate house, and it extended up the east side there and then wrapped around the north and then back down south to the primary house on the property. Something to take note of on the property is that it's really a broad valley, and you have this broad drainage corridor that extends from the north down to the south. And you have slopes that primarily are draining from west east to the center of the property. There's a ridge line on the west and a ridge line on the east. And they're pretty much all the water is draining back into the property on the site. So the various homes that border the property to the west, north, and east, they're actually they're either draining away from the property or they're draining onto our property. But in most cases, we're not draining to those residential properties that surround the property to the west, north, and east. We're primarily draining down through this small stream that runs through the center of the property and then goes down through the field club at the south. enters into a man-made pond on that property and then flows to the west down to the 5 Mile River. Next slide. So what I'd like to do now is to review with you the different ecological communities that we identified on the property. We found in general there's 4 upland communities and 6 wetland communities. We differentiate these primarily by vegetative cover, but also land use activities that affect that. So we'll quickly review through the upland and then spend a little bit more time on the wetland. Next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta push my own forward. So there's a forested community on the property, and it's going back to the 1934 aerial. That was primarily in the eastern part of the property, except down in the southeastern corner. But and here's some photos that show that that area. The canopy is mostly native trees, beech and oak, and tulip are dominant species. The shrub layer is like you find throughout many areas in Fairfield County, a lot of invasive vegetation in the shrub layer. And then the forest floor, the ground cover is a mix of invasives and native vegetation. Next slide. You got it. Okay, thank you. The next upland community is a mowed meadow that you find in the southern portion of the property. And we have various photos there that show you where that is. And we have a third community is this, what we're calling the suburban yard. This is around the estate house. It's also around the other small residential building in the northeast corner of the property. And that's a picture in the bottom right-hand side. And the top left-hand side is photos facing north of the the primary house on the property. So this area is mostly maintained with lawn and large shade trees and flowering trees, and then areas of ornamental shrubs in different locations. There are a lot of improvements in these areas and throughout the rest of the property. You have subsurface sanitary disposal systems, you have wells, and a lot of drainage improvements, and not the type of drainage improvements that we do today when we develop a property. Most of the drainage improvements were to make areas that were wet drier, and just to help convey water through the property more quickly and to dry out wet areas. So as we discuss the wetlands later, we can get into that more and more. In the northernmost portion of the property is an area that is somewhat of an island within the a wetland in that northeast corner, and one of the wetland areas that have higher quality on the property. In this area, it looks like it's been used to dump yard waste from the property over, I would think, many decades. There's piles of wood and it's pretty deep, filled with landscape waste organic material that has been collected on the property over many decades. There's a big gap in the forest canopy, and covering much of that area of fill is Japanese knotweed. So you have very aggressive invasive vegetation plus the fill right in the middle of a good quality wetland in that area. And so that area is in the north. Now we'd like to discuss the wetlands, and we'll start in that same area for the wetland that surrounds that area of impact. So associated with that fill area for the landscape debris is also a access drive to the second residence that's on the property. And that access drive was built through the wetland in that area with a gravel drive, and pictures on the left show that access drive. So both the fill from the landscape debris and the fill from the driveway are affecting the flow of water through this wetland. Not substantially, because there are ways that it around the landscape fill, it makes its way around the north end of that between Brookwood Lane and the fill itself. And then when it backs up just uphill of the drive, but if you get a certain amount of rain, it'll just flow over the top of the drive in that area, and then make its way down. And in the just below that, at the southern end of that wetland system, it goes into a pipe and then makes its way down into the central corridor stream system that flows through the property. And so for the next several wetland systems, this is just more pictures of that first community. The wetland itself is quite nice. It's relatively flat, so it has good storage for stormwater. And that fill area is an area where we are proposing mitigation. So by removing that fill, you'd increase the ability of this wetland to store much more water and thereby help property owners downstream by preventing or minimizing, reducing flood flows, water flood flows that would go downstream off the property. So it's a really great location to do mitigation. You get a lot of bang for your buck. You're not only removing significant invasive Japanese knotweed, but also substantially improving the functions of that wetland at the site. The wetland community 2, this is at the just downstream of the area we looked at and downstream of the entry drive that comes into the property off of Brookwood Lane in the northern portion of the property. And so this is a watercourse channel. It's been heavily altered over the years. A lot of stone line, the channel's been stone lined. There's some small bridges that extend over it, and fill has been placed around it, and a lot of improvements. And as we go down this channel and make our way all the way down to the southern end of the property, there are different piped networks that are coming in and out of the stream as you go along the stream for various reasons. Some to help enhance a pond that was made, and others to drain wetlands that are nearby this stream. So they wanted to keep the water in the stream and keep the water in the ponds that were made, and in many cases get the water out of the wetland areas. So as we're moving downstream, and now you can see the pond, and the pond is in an area where there's more of the upland suburban yards surrounding it. It's a beautiful, small, man-made pond. And you can see how the channel is there's a lot of stone lining of the channel and the banks of the pond and whatnot. So the pond provides habitat value for finfish and other aquatic organisms. With the stone on the edge, it diminishes its value because of the lack of a transition planted shelf and ability for animals to move to and from the pond. But it's still, it has value with diversifying the habitat on the property and providing habitat for animals that otherwise wouldn't exist on the property. And then as you then further looking at community 3, we come down from the pond, and again, there's more stone lining of the channel, but about within 100 feet from the bottom of the pond, that watercourse gets piped into a couple of large pipes, and it extends through. I'm going to push ahead to wetland community 6. We'll come back to 4 and 5. That pipe extends through wetland community 6, which we're calling a suburban yard wetland. This is an area where they took the watercourse, they piped it. There's like 2 or 3 systems of pipes going down through this wetland, and they also put in drains running east and west of that. Because as I mentioned earlier, you have the slopes coming down from the east and west, and you have this watercourse drainage system right down the middle. And they put in drains at the base of those slopes to stop the water from getting to this central wetland area, this lawn area. So they had a stream going through it, they piped that, and they put these drains that run down either side of it. Then they put about a foot of fill over this wetland so that they could substantially dry it out and maintain it as a lawn, but legally it still meets the definition of a wetland. There's not sufficient, if there was 2 or 3 feet of fill, it wouldn't be a wetland anymore. But since there's about a foot or less, it's still a wetland, even though it's much drier than it would have been before all these drains were put in. So this pipe system through this wetland area extends 300 or 400 feet, really the length of the lawn. So then if we go back to, apologize for this, it just made sense to. Well, now we'll discuss wetland 4. And wetland 4 is basically the wetlands that are east and west of that central lawn wetland system. And the eastern portion of this wetland system is where that the existing access drive is that we're proposing to improve and expand by a few feet. And so the drive has drainage improvements associated with it also that affects this wetland. And this wetland is primarily a sloping system. So unlike the other wetlands that are down through the center of the site, this wetland has less opportunity to hold water. It's more of a groundwater discharge. Water's coming down through the slope and coming out and causing a sloped wetland that still has value as a wetland, but it doesn't hold water for flood detention and help to improve flooding downstream. It doesn't have a good opportunity to clean water, because one of the primary ways of cleaning water in a wetland is to be able to hold it. And because these wetlands are primarily sloped, the water just moves through them. It still has potential to be cleaned, but not to the level that the flatter wetland systems in the center of the property do. But the drive extends north to south through this wetland system, and on the uphill side, or it acts like a dam. On the uphill side, it slightly expanded the wetlands to control water near their drive. They put in drainage ditches along the drive in different areas. So water's coming down off the slope, coming from the homes, the residential homes to the east, and it's coming down, and they have these channels in along the drive that collect the water, and it goes to a number of culverts that are located every 100 feet or more along the drive. That water's collected, put through the culvert that goes under the drive, and then it comes back out the other side. What that has done, so it's made it a little bit wetter on the uphill side with these drainage channels. On the downhill side, it's made some of the wetlands drier because it took water that otherwise would have been spread out over several hundred feet and slowly moving through the landscape. And now it's pinpointed it through different pipes along that drive. So where it comes out, it's very wet. Some other areas, it's a little drier than it was historically. When you walk through that area, some of these drier areas, you might not think they're wetlands, but when you check the soils, the wetland soils are still there. So they are wetlands. And so it's those areas on the downhill side, one, because they're sloping, they have lower functional capacity than the flatter wetlands. And 2, because water has been diverted away from their function, their primary function of groundwater discharge really doesn't exist anymore, because the road has taken that water away. So we have a number of photos as you go along. You can see where the pipes, as you see these short segments of walls, these are where the pipes are. These are head walls and end walls where the pipes go under the drive. And at the very end of that central drainage corridor, where the drive currently and historically came down, it ran north to south, and then it turned west to come down through the center of the property. This is where those the pipes from the upper pond area come out and discharge just below that old where the drive crosses east to west. And so the channel in this area, there's been filling around the channel, and these pipes outlet into that channel. And so, yep. Immediately east of this is a wetland meadow. So it's adjacent to the upland meadow, mown meadow that's on the property. This meadow is similar to that suburban lawn wetland where it has been drained in many cases, and there's a shallow layer of fill. And those improvements were done to make the meadow pasture more usable for past farm uses. And so it's much drier than it historically would have been. It's in the southeast corner of the property. And so there's old altered wetland meadow area. So now that's summary of the existing conditions information. And under proposed, they're proposing improvements to the existing driveway. For the majority of the driveway, it includes expanding the width from 14 to 18 feet. And at the northern end, it does shift the location of the driveway in order to create a building lot on the both north and south side of the driveway in that location. The lot on the north side is the location where there's that existing second house on the property, caretaker's house. And then on the south side, that proposed lot is in the upland, the Oak Beach Tulip Woodland is located. On this drawing, north is to the right and south is to the left. The light green areas that are shown are wetland areas. The light blue is pond and watercourse stream areas. And then some of the darker green areas are areas where we're proposing different planting to restore or enhance habitat and along the proposed roadway improvements. But as you come in along the driveway, there will be stormwater management systems to control the runoff during and after construction. So during construction, typical soil erosion and sediment control measures will be used. Because this is a very linear feature, it makes the potential for soil erosion much less because the disturbance area is being spread out along a long, thin area. So we're lucky that it allows for much easier to control soil erosion and sedimentation. So there isn't 300 feet of disturbed slope that water could be running down and eroding over 300 feet and then carrying sediment over that 300 feet. We have a very narrow strip of say 30 feet wide that where there's the potential for some erosion. And so it'd be pretty easy to control that. And through the use of silt fencing on the downhill side to be able to trap sediment that might erode in those areas. Len DeAndrea is here, and I'm going to, with regard to soil erosion and sediment controls and with regard to stormwater management practices to control stormwater after construction, he can provide more detailed information about that if you have questions. But for the long term, it's important, as I noted earlier, although there's a lot of drainage improvements on the property today, they were not designed to control quantity or quality of stormwater runoff. They particularly from developed surfaces. So you have that existing driveway, you have runoff from the impervious surface that is carrying pollutants and that's not being collected and cleaned. The proposed driveway improvements include, let me see, 7 different practices along the length of the driveway. 5 of them are subsurface infiltration chambers that'll be installed below the driveway. And then there's 2 small biofiltration basins. You could call it a rain garden, or there's many different names you could use. And but the primary purpose of all those features is to collect the water, hold it, clean it, slowly release it, and collect the water from the all or most of the proposed driveway. And so today, where that water is not being collected and treated, in the future it will be collected and treated. So that's a good thing for the wetland. And by putting it into the ground, it helps to so it removes pollutants. It helps to cool the water, and then it slowly makes its way through the ground and helps to feed the wetlands that are downhill. So another feature, in addition to improving the driveway, the project also includes a dry hydrant. And you can see that extending east to west through the central portion of the property, and extends east of the man-made pond. And so what that is, that there will be a pipe that extends down to the pond, and a hydrant will be located up near the shared driveway, and the fire department could then hook up to that hydrant and pump water from the pond, so that they could fight any potential fire that might happen at the homes on this property. So with the proposed expansion of the driveway, there is, along the edge of the driveway, where you have these existing wetlands we talked about. On the uphill side, wetlands were expanded with drainage ditches, and on the downhill side, some of the wetlands were made more dry. There will be proposed encroachment into those areas, and some of that is temporary and some of it is permanent. And since we published our report, the design has been refined to help reduce that area further. We at the time of our report, we estimated around 4,800 square feet of alteration, and that total is lower now, and a lot of that is temporary now. And before the meeting, your next meeting, we'll provide a new number with regard to that. So, but it's around 4,800. A fair amount of it is temporary, some of it is permanent. The vast majority of it is working within wetlands that were altered and continue to be altered because of the existing driveway. So to offset that, we saw a great opportunity to create some very high functioning wetlands at the northern portion of the property, as discussed, in the area of the landscape, where the landscape debris is piled in the area of the existing driveway to the caretaker's house. And so we are, on this drawing, the drawings that we submitted to you, the habitat enhancement drawings, we are proposing to remove the fill from those areas, remove the debris, drop those areas back down to their historic grade, match the grade of the wetland on either side, and create this low-lying, shallow depression, relatively flat wetland area that allows for significant expansion of surface water storage, water treatment. There's water that flows into this from the north, from residential properties to the north. So again, the properties adjacent to us are flowing onto the property rather than we're not flowing towards them, they're flowing towards us. So if they have lawn areas and things like that that have pollutants, this area would help clean that so that the stream downstream is cleaner when the water leaves the property. And so there's significant amount of, I think we're planting somewhere around 70 trees with that restoration, and both in the wetland and the buffer. Most of the tree plantings are in the wetland. We've provided a very detailed management plan for the area to control invasive vegetation. It's as I mentioned, the Japanese knotweed is in that area. That's a very significant and challenging plant to control. But what makes me very confident that we can get it under control here is that it's growing fill that we're going to actually remove. Sometimes you're trying to control it where you leave the root system in place, and that makes it really difficult. But because we'll be removing a couple of feet of fill, we'll be able to get the vast majority of the root system of that plant. So it'll make it much easier to control that. So it's really a good opportunity here. Then we also recognize there's a lot of opportunities for improvement here. That area is over 14,000 square feet of restoration. I mentioned earlier, the impact area is under 5,000 square feet. So it's almost a 3-to-1. And I think when we get you the updated numbers on impact, it'll be way above 3-to-1 in mitigation. But even with that, it was hard not to do something in that yard wetland in the center of the property, which is just to the left of the pond that you see on the drawing. So the pipes that extend through there is a couple 100 feet, and these pipes are 12 to 18 inches in diameter. So we're proposing to remove a section of that pipe and restore an open water course through that area. And this just provides more habitat value for animals to have access to the water during a larger storm. Instead of water building up in that pipe and just, if it fills the pipe, it'll just push it faster downstream. But now that it's open, that water can come out and spill out into the wetland area, and that wetland can serve a floodplain value and help to reduce flooding downstream. So it opens that water course to that floodplain wetland area and help to improve the functions in that area. And that's about 255 feet of water course restoration. So we have the close to 15,000 square feet of wetland restoration and 255 feet of water course restoration. So when I consider that, I consider the improvements, the stormwater management along the driveway. So even with the expansion of that driveway, a couple feet on either side, with all the improvements in stormwater management and habitat restoration, it's my professional opinion that the project will have a net benefit impact to the wetlands and water courses on the property, and will help with stormwater quality downstream and helping to control flooding downstream as well.
Thank you. Does the commission have questions for Mr. Kenny at this point before we move on to more presentations from the applicant?
Yeah, Angela, I have one or a couple. This is
you.
about the piping. This is Dan. Do you have an estimate, Bill, of how many feet in piping you have on this piece of property? And
I would say it's over 600 feet.
oh, it's got to be more than that.
Yeah, probably. Well,
Come on.
I don't want to.
You're talking about community 3. It seems like that whole thing is under piping, and that's I wanted to go with community 3 or wetlands 3 or whatever you call it, but you kept talking about piping. I mean, how deep is this piping, and what are the pipes made out of, and when were they put in? I mean, to me, that's a major thing on this piece of property.
It's not uncommon on old estates like this. It was very common back in the 30s and 20s to do things like this. And so and I think the pipes were put in at that time, and then over the years they were upgraded. So some of them now are plastic pipes, but many are concrete. Some are tile, some of the original are tile, but I would say
how deep would they be?
now.
How deep would they be?
They're close to the surface.
They are.
So the bottom of the pipe is, I would say it's more 2 feet down and maybe a foot of soil over it in many locations.
A lot of piping. It's a lot of piping, and a lot can go wrong with piping. That was my initial question, Angela.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanford?
Yes, hi. I guess we're looking at reduced copies of some big maps here. Is that?
We had two maps that we merged together to create this map.
I just have a pretty basic question as to where the existing driveway, how I can make out where the existing driveway is and where the new driveway.
Yes,
I think I can identify the new driveway, but I'm not clear on.
that on the early map,
Let's go
the
to Lon's
USG.
plan. Let's go to Lon's.
At the this guy, or
Okay, this,
okay.
So if you move, well, trying to see what the easiest one is for you to see. I mean, if I can sort of explain, you can kind of see it. See existing conditions map. If you, all the maps are online, so you can zoom into them. That might be easier for you. But basically, the driveway, the only part of the driveway, the proposed driveway that doesn't follow the existing driveway is right when you first come in the stone gates. And that's because the fire marshal wanted a different angle when they come into the property. So there's just a slight area there where it does differ from what's existing. And then it follows the path of the existing driveway all the way through.
So for the record, this is Angela Jameson. I've just unfurled a map, which is part of the public record, which shows not only the new proposed driveway, but here in yellow, you can see the existing driveways.
okay.
So there is quite a significant amount of driveway that is not going to be utilized, that would not be utilized.
Yeah, as far as the well, can I see what you're looking at?
Probably was the one we used for the site visit.
Yeah.
So maybe updated from there, but.
Sure.
This is the map from the site visit, and this is available online for anyone that's interested. But so up in this northern corner, in this area, up in the northern corner, this is the area that Bill was talking about, that Mr. Kenny was talking about, that where we'll be removing driveway, improving the wetlands, sort of really more where my hand is off the map. This area here is where the driveway does change its curve just slightly. And that's because that's the area where the fire marshal asked for us to have a slightly different curve in the driveway. But then once you get to the point here, which is sort of just beyond the gatehouse, if you remember from your site visit, at that point we connect in and just follow the existing driveway.
And widen.
And widen, yes.
A follow-on question?
None. Can I take a look?
She'd like to take a look. Very good. So this is Angela Jameson for the record. Mr. Kenny, we certainly always appreciate it when applicants come in with a plan for restoration of wetlands and mitigation. That's always much appreciated. But we need to think about what the impact on the wetlands would be post-restoration when you have this big driveway, which is really akin to a road, that will be serving 5 different properties. Clearly, there'll be a lot of traffic on that driveway. There will be pollution from those cars. So we're not talking about a big 32-acre pristine estate that was tampered with in the past before anyone knew anything about wetlands, and certainly there were no regulations. We're talking about what will become really quite a densely populated area where there is a risk of significant pollution to the wetlands that have been restored, as well as those that currently exist.
Yes. I appreciate that. Yes. Or is there a question?
Yes, you agree with me.
That there will be increased use, and that we did take that into consideration with the fact that the water will be collected and cleaned from that surface. And the state has set standards and for treating water, and they say if you reach these standards, then they have concluded that that is that you're adequately protecting wetlands and waters of the state. And then what they've done is through research completed by many universities and EPA and people around the country, they then looked at what best management practices can be used to achieve those standards. And then they have design criteria for all those best management practices. And they published, which they just updated this past year, their water quality manual, stormwater quality manual, where they provide all of those different best management practices. And they say, design them according to these criteria. And if you do that, then those best management practices will treat the water to the level that we think is adequate. And if you do that, then we believe that the land development that is being proposed can be done in a way that's can protect the waters and avoid adverse impacts from water qualities to wetlands and watercourses. So based on that whole process, that's where we draw our conclusions that this can be done. And also when you add in that there isn't currently best management practices with the existing, not only just this driveway we're talking about, but the existing homes and the existing other driveways on the property that go to those homes. So, and all the new, although they're not part of this request for a permit now, but all the new homes and driveways and whatever patios and walks and things that they have, that stormwater runoff from those surfaces will also be collected and cleaned.
But if this access way, this driveway, this 18-foot driveway, were actually the access for a smaller number of properties, there would be less pollution of the wetlands. Is that correct?
Sure, I think you might have less pollutants on the surface of the driveway, but running, after you run it through the best management practices, you would have not measurably more pollutants reaching the wetlands themselves. That the way that these systems are designed. And we could provide more information for you at the next meeting to support that, but yeah.
So maybe this would be a good time to ask for some more detail about the alternatives that you considered. We referred to very briefly at the beginning that you did consider alternatives, but you said that it would involve tearing up more stuff and actually cutting down more trees. Could we hear the details of the alternatives that you have considered?
Sure. I mean, I think there are, you know, really what it comes down to is we're trying to use this. Let me go to the proposed survey. So part of what we're trying to do is, in particular with lots 1 and 2, which are I'm sorry, not lots 1 and 2, I'm sorry.
Are you able to zoom that in?
Let's see.
There you go.
All right. So in particular with the last 2 lots, the 2 furthest south lots,
5 and 6,
which are 5 and 6 on the map that we're looking at right now, the alternative for them would be these 2 lots actually have their legal frontage, and this is more from the zoning standpoint, on the access way that you see to the west. So the alternative would be to bring in driveways through there, which would take, there's, as you can see, even from this survey, a number of trees that would need to come down through that area. Or, you know, there were other plans that I've seen in the past that had driveways coming more through the center of the property. So, you know, there are alternatives that we have looked at, all of which involved more disruption to this property than what we were looking at. And I think the point being that this driveway, as Mr. Kenny sort of began his presentation, the wetlands on either side of this driveway they're not good quality wetlands right now. So anything we can do to improve them is an improvement, but by keeping this area, we're not you know, going into a new virgin part of the property that doesn't have any development on it right now.
Right, but if I'm looking at lots 6 and 5, they could actually, as you said, be accessed from Brookwood Lane, which would mean that you actually didn't need this big roadway, the 8-foot driveway that goes right through the wetlands to extend as far. Because actually for lot 9, you could sort of end it pretty much where the entranceway is shown on lot 9. And that would be a significant reduction in the square footage of this access way and the increased square footage of the wetlands.
In addition, if I know there's an existing driveway in part into that area, we did walk that on the site visit. Sorry, Kathleen Holland for the record. If you were to look at that alternative to go up towards access from 5 and 6 from the top side, you would potentially be able to do some restoration of that existing driveway, even removal of that driveway to then restore some additional wetlands down that lower area. And I think that is something that staff would like to see you investigate and provide as an alternative to development and then vet out whether or not it does truly weigh out as a less impact or a similar impact. You know, you guys have to give us the evidence on that. So then the commission can make a decision on, you know, the least impact for overall development.
Okay. We'll certainly look into that. I mean, I will say that I think bringing more traffic down that end of Brookwood Lane was certainly, we did have a meeting with the neighbors in advance of today's hearing and the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, which we have coming up. And that was certainly not something that was preferred by the neighborhood. That's one of the reasons I'll say why we are considering this, and I know that's not an alternative that is necessarily relevant to the Wetlands Commission, but just so you understand, part of what we're looking at here is also minimum impact on the neighbors. And by bringing in the
It's
new
only
cars.
2 more houses.
Right.
Yeah, 5.
It's not.
You're adding 2. Right.
And, you know, we certainly hear you that you want to accommodate the neighbors as much as possible. And we've heard already, and I'm sure we'll hear more, that the neighbors do have concerns, but you're absolutely spot on. From the perspective of this commission, our focus is solely on protection of the wetlands, and having those additional 2 properties with an access way onto Brookwood Lane would not require going through wetlands.
Okay. We'll definitely take a look at it and we'll bring you that
Terrific.
information back as far as the different impacts.
Beth Sanford.
Yeah, I have a question, Beth Sanford. You mentioned that if you were to access through Brookwood for those 2 lots, that it would require cutting down more trees. Where are you cutting down trees and what is the impact there?
With the current proposal?
Yes.
There are some trees alongside the driveway that would need to be removed that are within the area of the expansion. It's actually what we were just talking about that today. We need to get an exact number. Part of the reason we don't have an exact count for you is a number of the trees are already dead. So we'd like to get you a more accurate number of what are the sort of living trees that would need to come down. But we think it's including the dead ones. I think we thought somewhere in the vicinity of 30, but I don't want to want you to quote me on that. I want to get an exact count for you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Redden for the record. So when the fire marshal asked you to change, did lot 7 increase in size?
No, that just changed the layout of 7 and 8.
And he was asking you to, so it appears, I mean, looking at the old drawing, and I'll go speak to the marshal tomorrow, but the curve from the old drawing from Brookwood Lane in, I can clearly see the yellow, which is probably hard for the audience to see, but the new entrance coming in, this Brookwood Lane here could easily connect and go through where your house is on this. It could connect right to the old driveway. And that's less of a curve and no impact. So as an alternative, I'd love to have that conversation with the marshal again to see if that, if there's a proper understanding of what he's asking for. Because my understanding is that the marshal said for the fire trucks to have access, you had to have wider and less radius. But that doesn't appear to be the case. It's wider, but instead of connecting, you're increasing. But what it does do for the builders or the developers is it gives you two better lots. In other words, if you went through what I think is lot 7 right now, on a shallow curve right into Brookwood Lane, I can tell you as the former fire commissioner, they can access that.
Okay, we'll take a look at it. I mean, that area, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, that area is not, that's moving further away from the wetlands in that where we've moved the driveway, right?
There's wetlands to the
Oh,
west.
okay, it's moving away from one closer to another.
Well,
I
I'm
see.
saying right where lot 7 house is depicted, right? You've got the curve at the top going down, a little bit of an S curve. So you could just straighten that out right into Brooks. It's a nice shallow curve. It goes through where the house is depicted. And I'm sure the house can be situated someplace else, but you know,
We'll definitely take a look.
less of an impact for sure. I'm
Okay.
not sure why this curve is so far. I guess this isn't north. This would be west.
That's to the top of the page would be west,
Okay.
correct? Okay, we'll definitely take a look at that. Like I said, that was done in consultation with the fire marshal, but we'll take a closer look at that if that can be changed.
So just, this is Angela Jameson for the record, just following on to that line of questioning. If that shared driveway were only going to accommodate 2 or 3 properties, would it be possible for the driveway to be narrower than 18 feet? What is the tipping point for the fire marshal here?
The fire marshal does want to see why don't I have Mr. DeAndrea, since he was actually the one that spoke directly with the fire marshal, maybe I'll have him.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yes.
Good evening. For the record, Leonard DeAndrea, Connecticut professional engineer with DeAndrea Surveying and Engineering PC. And we provide the land surveying services for this property going back, I think it was 2019. And then the previous owner as well, and then the current owners. Let me just first touch on the location of the existing mouth as we've relocated it. It's not, in my opinion, that wasn't directed by the fire marshal.
Oh,
We felt that was a better location to give, as you pointed out, a better building envelope for lot 7. So we can certainly look at that and see if we can slide that down some. With that, do you want me to continue with some presentation?
Yeah, so I apologize. I think there were 2 different things going on in the driveway, so I apologize if I misspoke about that. I'm glad I got Mr. DeAndrea. Do you want to talk about the width of the driveway as well?
The width of the driveway was important. It does vary. It could be as narrow, I think, at one point of 12 feet wide. And then on the average, I think it was about 14 to 15 feet wide. And the 18 feet wide means that you can have an emergency vehicle coming down. Maybe someone else is coming out because of the emergency. And we didn't want to have a problem where it was an impasse. So we thought about doing things where, well, let's keep it narrow. And then where we can, where there were no wetland that would be impacted, we could widen in that location. And that's something that can be revisited again. We can also, as you talked about, as we get past lot 9 or that third house coming in on that driveway, could we then talk to the fire marshal and see if he would accept something as low as maybe 14 feet wide? So we can explore that as well.
Well, thank
Thank you.
thank you very much for the clarification, Mr. DeAndre.
And to at the very end, they're always pestering us to be able to turn around easily. So at the very end is a cul-de-sac that works. We have the templates, we show the turning movements, and that, because it's a large enough diameter now, gives us a great opportunity to do a rain garden. So in the center of that is our rain garden.
Kathleen Helen, for the record, just revisit the zoning subdivision regulations. I believe 16 feet is your minimum on the subdivision.
On the driveway. Yeah, and I will, because I think if we get down to the two houses, I think you may be right. Once you're sharing it, you have to increase it. I think you're right.
So
Okay.
you might be able to shave off 2 feet, but not 4.
Yeah. Okay.
So Angela Jameson, just a little bit of housekeeping here. It's 8:15. We can probably spend another 15 minutes or more here. Does on this particular application, do the applicants have other presentations that
think
they'd
we-
like us to hear? Perhaps
we
Mr.
need to hear
DeAndre?
Well, I was hoping to just run down through what we have done that's required of us from the drainage standpoint.
Yep, very
Mm.
good. And, take your time. We're talking approximations
It
here.
won't take too much. I'll talk fast. Okay, so I believe slide 40, I believe is the start of our plan and profile sheet. What we're looking for right now is the plan and profile sheets that we prepared, which in our set starts on sheet 12. Yeah, wait a minute. Okay, keep going. Let's see. Keep going. So you're on the wrong way. Yep, and if you can blow it up.
Yep.
Okay, so what you're seeing,
Sorry.
okay, as a bit of a blow up, we're going to look at sheet 12 of 16. What we did for the existing driveway is we created both a plan and profile so that you could see the slope of the driveway existing and proposed, and also in more detail, see the width of the driveway, how it aligns with the existing driveway, and then what are we doing to address the drainage requirements. So as we start at station 0 + 0, that's 0 feet, and it's starting right at the roadway. We have the driveway shift that allowed that existing exit point from the cottage to be eliminated completely. And then as we move in just about 75 feet, 0 + 75, we proposed the first of our 2 catch basins. Now, as I talk about these catch basins, there are no catch basins presently along the driveway. So what we want to do is be able to capture it so that we can retreat it. Those 2 basins for water quality will then feed off to an array of 12 infiltrators, and that will address the water quality volume that we need to address or take care of.
Do you mind zooming in a little bit as you
Yeah, let's
as you
see.
talk about those particular features?
You can use your cursor.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see if I see right there, I believe. Okay, sorry. There you go, right there. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the first set, and that's just about 75 feet into the property. You move down to about 425 feet into the property. This will be on the same sheet. And we come to a point where we have our next set of catch basins. And there's two additional basins there. Again, feeds 12 more infiltrators. And the basins, of course, are deep sumps and traps. And then lastly, on this page, at 530 feet in are another set of 2 basins. And that will feed into another set of 12 infiltrators. So going on to the next page. Oop, too far.
Sorry, yeah, no, I gotta unzoom
Sheet
before I
13,
can.
yeah.
get into
That's right, yeah. The one before that. Next one.
No, there-
Uh-oh, are we missing one?
Yeah, we're missing.
Yeah, sure we can. Okay. Because as you get down to station 640, there's a high point in the roadway, and let's see, that's just before somewhere about there, right about there. And that's a point where there's just a little bit of a high point. So at that point, runoff on the driveway is going in a northerly direction and also then going in a southerly direction from that point. Go down to 775 feet in, 7 plus 75, right where your cursor hand is now. That's where we take off and go up to the pond, and we'll have a dry hydrant in that pond. When you talk to the fire department, they'll make it very clear to you that there's no water available in the area. And we're going to look to see if we can give it to them from 2 different directions. This was the first. They can drive down here, go up to that pond, with the dry hydrant in place. And it's not to serve just this subdivision. This is going to be available 24/7, 365 days a year. That will not be gated. They'll have full access to this pond.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Angela Jameson for the record, I just have a question. So where the dry hydrant is, there will be a driveway.
So that's a good question. Sorry about that. We hope they never have to use it. So we don't feel a need to put something like a bituminous pavement down. Instead, we'll do what we refer to often as grasscrete, a honeycomb section, let the grass grow through it. Doesn't have to be maintained at all, just so the fire department knows where it is and they can travel on it. No woody vegetation, no trees, but it'll be green.
Does it require the Sanford here, cutting down trees to create that access?
Yeah, yes, there will be some trees that will come down. I don't have the exact count, but just looking quickly here, probably 6, maybe 8 to 10 trees probably. Again, we're trying to get that width. Now, in this case, they'll back down most likely and siphon in, and then they'll drive away. So it's not that we have to provide a hammerhead or any sort of turnaround, just the ability to get down there, grab the water and come back out. We could certainly, that's 15 feet wide. We can certainly talk to the fire marshal and see if they'll accept something slightly thinner. On this last page here at the 1,145 feet in, we'll have 2 more catch basins, but in this case, it's going to overflow into the to make sure I say it right, Mr. Kenny here, the micro pool detention pond with a 4-bay designed by Kenny Associates. So something a little different than our typical infiltrators.
That's this right here.
That is that right there, correct?
It's it looks a bit like a bean.
Which you get the detention through. Now you should have the next page. I think the way it worked out. Yep. Yep. That's okay. Go back to planet profile. I can use it. I think you can use it. Nope. Go back. Okay, go back to whatever you can get. There you go. Okay, so as we get into sheet 14 of 16, we're getting down to station 1300, 13 plus 00, that's 1,300 feet in from the roadway. Again, another set of basins. This one will feed 9 infiltrators before it overflows out into the wetland meadow. Moving on down, the last set of basins will be at 1520. These, again, will overflow into 12 more infiltrators. And then finally at 1650 is where we have the cul-de-sac, and that'll be a rain garden. So in total, we're introducing 57 infiltration units and 12 catch basins, the micro pool and the rain garden, and all designed to capture, treat, and infiltrate the rainwater in accordance with the town's drainage design requirement. The other thing that came up with the first revision we made is reduce impacts. Reduce impact, reduce the amount of disturbance. So all along that plan and profile, which are the larger scale sheets, you'll see now we've introduced some walls. They're very low. They're maybe a foot high, but the whole idea there is just to contain it, not just contain it for disturbance overall, but for the future. It's a demarcation feature. It works well. It will contain everything within. Even if you were to plow, it will help contain that snow as it gets pushed around within the limits of the walls. And you'll see that we have it in quite a few areas on both sides. But again, not high retaining walls, just something so that we don't have to grade out an extra 4 or 5 or 10 feet. What I just described to you is summarized in our lovely drainage summary report. It goes through the subwatershed areas. It gives a table in there. Exhibit E is within there, and it that summarizes what we've achieved, which is peak flow rates. We've reduced volume as well. Now, to be straightforward with this commission, how did we achieve the volume control when the driveway is getting slightly larger? Well, there's a lot of structures on this site right now, and those will have to come out. We have to take out impervious surfaces to offset what we're doing for the driveway. So now you say, well, what do you do after that? Well, this is like a clean slate. And that's what we're saying, or I think Mr. Kenny alluded to earlier, the lots then have to take care of themselves. We take out the existing structures as they're now, houses, driveways. We get down to where we have a volume reduction. And now you go in to do a development of say, lot 7, and you have to meet the same requirements for the driveway that you put in, maybe the lawn areas, the house itself. So that again, at the end of the day, this model keeps building, but you still end up with the same result, and that's volume control, which is difficult for sure, but we have large enough properties that we can achieve this. I believe we satisfied for this application that we're doing tonight for the driveway. The town engineer, always willing to look at different alternatives and tweak it as best we can. The New Canaan Health Department was with us and witnessed all the test holes that we did for the septic systems, and those are viable. And, a 2-acre piece of property, as long as we have some decent soils, we can certainly prove and demonstrate that this is a feasible subdivision. And we think with Mr. Kenny's help and what we're working to achieve, I believe as a bucolic setting, when we got there the first time and you see that driveway, you like it. If you were a homeowner, I think you would prefer use this driveway and continue to use it to get to those last couple of lots versus going around a couple of curves at the top, come down the trees and come into it. Sure, it could go either way, but if you've walked it, I think you might have to agree it's a pretty nice setting. So we hope that you would approve it going forward, and we will certainly look at some additional alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have further questions for Mr. D'Andrea?
Angela, I have a question.
Please, Katie Owsley.
It's more of a question actually for maybe Kathleen and for you. I'm confused about how we're considering impervious surfaces because as you mentioned earlier, we're really only reviewing the driveway, but you're talking about using the subdivision lots themselves to account for impervious surfaces that may be altered with the driveway. So how are we accounting for those two different scenarios? One where we're supposed to be taking into account the actual lots and one where we're not.
So that's a good question, because what's happened recently is we've had to control this volume. And in a lot of towns, we've always had to just do peak rate of discharge. And one of the reasons that they handle it that way is we were never allowed to consider infiltration. So now you're designing these systems and they're larger, but you say, okay, control the peak rate of discharge. We're not too worried about volume. So if you think about that, then we can hold back the water and release it slowly, and we've controlled the peak rate of discharge. We haven't controlled the volume. So in this case, to make this application work, we need to control the volume more than we were worried about controlling the peak rate of discharge. In order to control the volume, we had to get rid of impervious surfaces. If this was a virgin piece of property and there were no structures on it, we'd have a little bit more of a difficult time. So we have a lot of impervious to take away, get that to work for this design. Now, when you come back to that piece of property, you have to offset what you're doing to the same level. Zeroing control of the volume off the site, as well as the peak rate of discharge, as well as water quality volume. 3 things.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Holland, do you have questions?
No questions, more process. There's likely to be more to come on kind of fulfilling that question that you're asking. Our town engineer did provide some comments regarding that in her report. If you want to review that as well. as far as procedures, sounds like some revisions are in the works.
Sounds like.
Can we talk about when we might see those revisions? So our next meeting is February 24th. This meeting is late this month, so
If I may, just to let you know what my dilemma is. This report you'll see was signed and sealed by Adam Serini. He's a good, sharp engineer. Unfortunately, he has a detached retina right now, second go around. So he just had his second surgery. I expect him back hopefully within the next 2 weeks. In the meantime, I'll see if we can get things going, but I'd say I'd probably need at least 2.5 weeks.
okay, so
That works. If not, my client will say you need to do it faster and I'll figure it out.
I mean, alternatively, we could get with the 35 days to the February 24th meeting, but if you need more time, we should probably look at an extension going to March out. So maybe think about that.
Why don't we convene and see how quickly we can get everything to you, and then maybe if it's a commission, you and I can speak directly, Kathleen, and decide if you think we'll get everything to you soon enough for the meeting on the 24th.
Okay.
Although I guess if I could ask, is there, I've tried to take some notes on questions that have risen. Is there anything else that has not come up today that anyone would like to see more detail on, or anything, so that we can make sure we fully answered all of your questions?
I would just say everything's been shared with anyone who has provided something to the town. So we do have 2 interveners on this application. So those notice of interventions were corrected. So they were accepted today, finally, one on Friday. So that has been shared with you guys as well. There, the interveners will have an opportunity to speak, but there is some memos in the record. Certainly take a look at that information, vet through those items. The
I was
commission
asking, is there anything else from any of
From
the
the
commissioners
commission?
that they
Yeah.
would like to see before the next meeting, so that we can make sure to provide everything to you?
Well, this is Angela Jameson. I think we would like to see what the alternatives are. And a further alternative could be that you really don't need this shared driveway if it were possible for there to be shared driveways from the lots that front onto Brookwood Lane to the lots that are behind them. That may or may not be possible. That may or may not be easy to avoid the wetlands, but that is just another thought that I had, that maybe you really don't need this big shared access way.
Well, there are wetlands through the center of
Yeah.
the property and an extremely steep slope. So,
Mhm.
but we will absolutely look at every possible alternative. I have to say, I do think that's going to be pretty challenging.
Yeah, challenge.
Is there anything else any other information that anyone would?
No, what about the commissioners on Zoom, Dan Stepanek and Don Mastinardi? Do you have any additional questions or things that you would like to see?
Well, I don't know. I think lot 3 is, I'm gonna go back to piping and water and the whole thing. I'd like to make sure that lot is buildable upon, okay? It seems like there's so much stuff going on. I don't know how you can miss the wetlands. I don't know how you can miss the piping and the whole thing. So that's what it's in the back of my head. I don't have a question. I have a concern about lot 3, really, and probably lot 4 too. So if you can show me that you can avoid the piping and avoid the wetlands and avoid the water, draining of water and stuff like that, and still build, I'm fine with it. But right now I have doubts.
Dan, I just want to chime in, Kathleen Holland for the record. So full development plans for those lots, that's not being proposed at this time. They are proposing to do some mitigation work with pipe removal on those lots. So at this point in the sequence of what might be happening here is their application is pending currently within the wetlands, also with for a subdivision review with planning and zoning. Inland Wetlands eventually will make a recommendation to planning and zoning regarding any concerns that they might have on individual lots. So that would be the
Okay.
appropriate time to do that, to do
All
that
right.
type of memo. That'll be sort of your second decision that you'll be making. So just for process, just wanted to explain that.
I got you. Thank you.
Good. So it's 8:34, and it would seem to me that this is a good place to adjourn the public hearing, which will be continued. And I want to thank everyone for their patience. I'm sorry we didn't get to hear everybody's point of view, but we will get there. The next meeting is February 24th. So we look forward to seeing as many of you as can make that. Do you have to vote to adjourn the public hearing?
No.
Nope.
You're just
So the
adjourning.
public hearing is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is application IW-24-33, 342 Indian Rock Road. So if
Tracy.
Tracy. Sorry, not just yet.
Hang on, he might have stepped. Hang on, folks. 1 second. Good evening, folks. For the record, my name is James McManus. I'm a certified professional soil scientist with JMM Wetland Consulting Services with offices in Newtown. We're here tonight to go over mitigation options that I put together for some unpermitted activities that took place earlier this or past year in 2024. And hopefully everybody has my January 11th letter that kind of lays out. I mean, I visited the site back in October 28th to just see what was actual happened, what the site looked like. I did not see the site prior. I saw the site actually after it really was all done, and all the areas were stable with grass. And so that's how I viewed the site. I have some pictures in my January 11th report that I took during that site visit. As you can see, if I can get to it. Just various parts of the site. The picture 1 kind of shows where the existing sump pump pipe outlet is today. And then 2 just shows kind of where it came from. And then 3 shows proposing an enhancement area. And so does a number 4. Number 5 shows a handful of ornamental grasses that were planted just along a small planting bed near the driveway. And then 6 was just an area where the small Kubota was used to kind of do the work. That was his access area, and then it was reseeded. If you continue on to my plan labeled LP-1.
Excuse me, this is Angela Jameson. Do you want to put that up on the screen
I
so
don't-
that it's easy for everybody to refer to it?
To that.
You did not do that. Okay. I don't know that I can. I only have 1 paper copy here.
Okay, well, maybe we just pass it around.
Yeah.
I mean, does it show a plan?
Is it on the site?
Yeah, it's on your tablets.
Okay,
I mean-
let's just get that up then.
Report. It's just a small 600 square foot little planting scheme.
What is the document called?
Well, the document is my letter, JMM wetland letter dated January 11th, 2025. And within that letter, you're going to see some attachments, and one of the attachments, it's actually two, is a planting plan. It has we didn't have any really good mapping, so I used an aerial photograph to depict where we wanted to do the
Open that.
planting plan. And also there's a call out that says proposed area pipe removal. There's an existing pipe that was there for many years. And the applicant extended that pipe.
Yeah, broke.
Broke, and then extended it down to where it is today. And I'll get into that, what we're going to plan to do with that in a second. I just want everybody to kind of.
So what document are you on right now? Because we've
I'm-
got them on our screens now.
I'm on our LP-1. It's the planting plan, 342 Indian Rock Road, LP-1.
There you go. So now make it smaller. Yeah. Here we go. So is this one? that we were looking at?
No,
Oh,
this
you
one.
have the big ones. Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Okay, they're good. They're good. Okay, go ahead.
So it's just well, the main issue with wetlands was the extension of what was it, a 4-inch? 4-inch sump pump drain pipe, plastic pipe. And we're proposing to remove that pipe 10 feet toward the house and then cut it. And that'll be the new outlet of the existing sump pump that was there that was broken, and he reestablished it. And so that's part of the mitigation plan, is to remove the 4 to 5 inches of fill that was associated with that, cut the pipe back 10 feet. And then we're also proposing this, as I just mentioned, this little 600 square foot little planting area that's associated with sweet pepper bush, red osier dogwood, and high bush blueberries. And there's also boulders that are kind of thrown around in that part of the site. We're going to move those boulders so it uses as a demarcation area. So landscapers and such won't go in there and turn that into lawn again.
And those were existing boulders. I know that was.
We're just going to move them where they are to.
There was one
more-
existing
Yeah,
bed that was already there.
right.
That was actually not in the wetlands. It was when it was marked, that was outside the wetlands, but there are other big boulders that were just
Tossed in.
strewn in there that are in the wetlands.
You want to pull those
When
back.
we spoke.
Yeah.
You mentioned maybe to pull them out.
Right.
And this is when the backyard was, when the house was built and they filled the backyard 40 years ago, there's a clear
Mhm.
drop off. So we're gonna pull the boulders back and make that a retaining wall, if you will, but just pull the boulders back against that.
We're not going to dig them in. It's just going to be a U-shaped sort of.
Yeah, it drops off
demarcation.
there naturally already. So yeah.
Actually to the low area where we're going to plant, and then we're going to screen the
And then
boulders.
that area where it is replant with, there's a bunch of intrusive stuff that's in there, and take that out. And then just clean up the area, because it was a kind of like a dumping area for
Mhm.
years for the landscape guys. Any brush that fell down, everything went back there.
Mhm.
And then replant it based on his recommendation,
Right.
so.
And then the other item was a handful of ornamental grasses that was near the driveway in the northern part of the site.
Mhm.
I didn't see a need to have them removed since there's only a few of them. They're small and it's adjacent to a well-established wooded swamp. Most of it's off-site, but some of it does extend on-site and has a thick understory of actually sweet pepper bush. So that was my conclusions from my visit and what I thought needed to be done to get Mr. Walker out of trouble.
Question. Thank you very much, Mr. McManus. Questions from the commissioners?
I have a comment. I mean, Commissioner Redden, for the record. So this has taken months. I appreciate you finally being hired, or anybody being hired, because this has taken months. And we're finally getting to a point where the applicant is actually paying attention or trying to mitigate, or, this is taking quite a while. I do not like to hear things like, just a small area or the small Kubota. It's Kubota. It was in the wetlands. There was a lot of damage done. So I just don't want to forget that. We're trying to fix something that was done and ignored for an extended period of time. And the commission doesn't take that lightly, as you know. It's my only comment.
Understood. I just wanted one more comment. I think Kathleen might have put it in her report. I am going to conduct because we're going to plant this in the spring, and then I'm going to be heading out in the fall to see how this 600 square foot mitigation areas has done.
Yeah, I would make that recommendation to the commission. It sounds like you're in agreement with it.
Right. We're going to do conclusion of this growing season, see how it's going. If there's invasives, we're going to eradicate them through the appropriate manner. Hopefully it's just pulling.
So this is Angela Jameson for the record. I'd like to hear more details about exactly what's going to be done and how it's going to be done. So how much fill are you going to be removing from the wetlands?
5 inches.
What equipment is going to be used, and who is going to do this work?
It's about 4 to 5 inches of fill on a 10-foot wide swath. It's maybe 10 feet by 3 feet. Triangle piece.
Triangle that's like 10 feet long widens out to like maybe 6
feet at most. 4 to 5 inches. We're going to cut the pipe back. I'm not sure how you're going to move those boulders. They're pretty heavy, but
they can be reached without going into the wetlands.
Yes, they can be.
So who is doing the work?
I'm assuming that the applicant is going to.
I don't know who's going to do it at this point.
But
I think that's a valid question.
Sure it is.
Because we want to know that somebody who understands the importance of the wetlands and protecting them as work is undertaken is actually doing this mitigation of the violation. And we want to know what kind of machinery, if any, is going to be employed.
Well, I don't have any answers to those questions. However, I could say that you could remove the fill where the sub pump pipe is by hand if you wanted to, or a Kubota type small bucket. But I don't even think you need. I think that's overkill, to be honest. It's only 4 inches.
The work could all be done by hand.
It can be all done by hand, every bit except for moving the boulders. That's the only thing you're going to need something else.
I think, to put it kindly, Mr. Walker did tell me that this is not his day job, doing the work with the machine and whatnot. So if the point is, whoever is going to be doing this work, they have to be knowledgeable on what they're doing and how they're going to go about doing it, because we don't want to set ourselves back into another violation. Well-meaning or not, you could easily get yourself into trouble again out there.
Right.
So I don't want to see that happen again.
You can't go into the wetlands, but you can reach in.
With
So-
the proper
And drag them
machine,
out.
yeah, I would hope that Mr. Walker will at least inform me if he's not going to do the work. Inform me of the contractor that he hired, so I can either have a conversation with him or even potentially be on site.
Just when a wetlands permit is issued, there's something called a contractor compliance form.
Right.
So that is sent to the homeowner, and whoever is hired, they give us their information as to who it is and when they'll be starting.
Okay.
So that is a requirement of the wetland permit. So that would happen as part of this process.
Sure.
So,
Well, here's a suggestion. What about asking Mr. McManus to be there when the work is being undertaken to supervise?
I was gonna just suggest that.
oh, very good. Did you say you were just going to suggest that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's not
Excellent.
like I don't care about the wetlands,
Oh, I
and I'm
know.
not worried about it,
Yeah.
which, I mean, that's not the case at all. If we knew we were in the wetlands, we wouldn't have done what we did, but it was
I don't.
floodplain, which is something we didn't know we were in.
Mhm, mhm.
And there's a difference.
I don't think it's a significant amount of work that needs to be done, but I do agree after a year, almost a year's time of trying to get this resolved, that it has to be overseen by the consultant.
Now, we're not looking to burden the commission anymore. We'd like to have this done.
If sounds like it's an acceptable
Special
condition
condition.
that the consultant oversee.
And just
the
for the
activities?
record, the floodplain, that's wetlands.
Yes.
No, I
That
understand.
is wetlands.
I
There's
understand.
no argument about
don't
that.
think
I understand that,
understood
but if
that. I
you
don't
don't
think
know
Mr.
if you're
Walker
in the
understood
floodplain,
Mhm.
then you don't know you're in the wetlands. And we didn't know that the floodplain went right up next to the house. There's no insurance required for the 100-year flood line there, so. I'm aware of those situations, and we weren't doing it to be malicious. But you all seem to think we did, and that's just not the case, so.
No, Commissioner Redden, for the record, we don't think you were malicious.
And I lived on the Mianus River for 25 years, and I understand.
Malicious is very different than ignoring the town.
We haven't been ignoring him. I mean, he's been hired for 3
Interrupt.
months, and we try to get other people when it's during holidays. You just couldn't do it, so.
You've been your own worst enemy.
Okay. Point taken.
I got two special conditions, one of which is that well, let's start with the most important one. The consultant will oversee all activities while contractors will be working on the site until completion. And then no later than November 25th, a final report shall be submitted to the Inland Wetlands Office by JMM Wetland Consulting Services, certifying compliance with the approved plan.
Right.
So.
And that includes that site visit I'll have in the fall.
So does anybody have any other questions or comments for Mr. McManus or Mr. Walker? If not, could I hear a motion, please? Nobody, okay, I'll make a motion. So I move approval of the permit to mitigate the violation that had occurred in the wetlands, subject to the 2 special conditions as outlined by Kathleen Holland. Firstly, that the consultant will be on site when the work is done, and secondly, that there will be a report given to the Director of Inland Wetlands by, did you say November?
I just picked November 2025
Right.
because Mr. McManus indicated in his report that they'd have the planting. You want 2 growing seasons, so spring and fall.
Yeah.
I think is what you were thinking.
I was thinking, when it starts to go dormant, I'll go and see how it did, which is going to be around the middle to the end of October.
Yeah. So
And I get
November. was
done
safe.
and hand it into the agency at the end of, before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so that's, you've heard the motion. Would anybody like to second that?
I will second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye, and right, we have Dan on screen there. Good. So the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that mine?
That's here.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. It's 8:54, 6 extra minutes. I don't think we'll need, she's just brought them just in case technology fails. So let me know if are you in the meeting already? You're on Zoom?
Oh.
Okay.
So moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 9, application IW-24-44, 1506 Oak Bridge, Jeffrey and Stephanie J. Seidel, and the agent Tracy Shalafu. Thank you, Tracy.
I'm not sure if I'm muted, but I don't hear any feedback or anything. So we good?
Good.
Okay,
You should
excellent.
be able to share your screen when you're ready.
My share button, Kathleen. Normally it pops right up. 1 second. Normally it's right down here. See if there's
I'm going to make you a co-host. Maybe that will make a difference.
Perhaps I'm also trying to, it looks like I'm in, but I'm gonna try to sign in here. Yeah, maybe if you could make me a co-host, we'll try that. Thank you. Says recording.
I'll take a look at it, but it's not my strong suit. Okay, so let's see. So where is?
And normally it
Presentation.
pops right up. It's here.
There.
Maybe all we have to do is select it and try that. Maybe that'll do it. And then maybe if we minimize this,
Okay.
try that.
Looks like it's just coming up.
Yeah, it looks like it's just on my screen.
I feel like it's right down below.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
wait,
right
wait,
down
this is what's
below.
going
Yes.
on.
Maybe the 3
There we go,
dots.
there
Oh, perfect.
Okay, you should go.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you, commissioners, for your patience. Okay. For the record, I'm Tracy Shalafo. I'm a landscape architect with Tracy Shalafo LLC located in Danbury, Connecticut. I'm representing the owners of 1506 Oak Bridge, Stephanie and Jeffrey Seidel. And this is an application for the suction dredging of a 1/4 acre pond. The residence is on the south side of Oak Bridge, and immediately behind the residence is this 1/4 acre pond, which if you see it during the growing season, it resembles pea soup. So it's in great need of being cleaned out so its aquatic habitat can be restored and it can perform more wetlands functions. So there are 2 different types of suction dredging that may be utilized to clean this pond, depending upon whether or not actually water temperatures really. So it would either be diver assisted suction dredging or hydraulic suction dredging. But either way, the slurry would be pumped from the pond to 2 geotextile tubes that would be set up in north of the pond. And we would temporarily grade to create level areas for those 2 geotextile tubes. And then once the dredging operation has been completed, that topography would be restored to the pre-disturbance conditions. The sediment, once dried, would be exported from the site, so we're not proposing to utilize any of it on site. And as part of this application, the owner was actually really interested in improving the wetland functions further by installing native wetland plantings as a buffer and within the wetlands, and namely behind the pond, where, if you recall from those of you who were at the site walk, there was a lot of bramble back there. A lot of it has died back, but there's a lot of bramble and invasive vegetation. So there's a great opportunity to just increase the biodiversity, clean things up. There were some logs back there as well. I'm not positive if they're on the property, but any logs that are on the property will be removed because we're actually proposing quite a dense replanting plan. So from the pond, the average sediment depth is 2.27 feet, and a total of 900 cubic yards, this is approximate, of wet sediment would be pumped out of the pond, and the 900 cubic yards would reduce to between 180 and 300 cubic yards of dried that would be exported. We should be able to, we'll definitely be able to achieve about an 8-foot water depth at the south end of the pond. That's where it's naturally the deepest. And we're just restoring it to the condition that it was prior to the sediment accumulating. So we're going back to the original depth and the original shape. And the mean water depth, once restored, will be 4.7 feet deep. There's only one tree to be removed as part of this application, and that is behind the pond. And if you recall, it's a declining, I think a declining spruce tree right about here. Yes, I've indicated it on the plan. So it's declining, and we're replacing it with new trees. There'll be a total of 4 native trees, 101 native shrubs, and for about 480 native perennials as part of this application. And also, we're going to be providing some buffer along the western shore of the pond here. So just to create some buffer between the house and the upland development and the pond. So overall, it should be a really substantial environmental improvement, and we're going to be providing a lot more habitat. Once the dredging operation is complete, the bags will be removed, as I mentioned, and any of those disturbed areas will be raked out and seeded as lawn. Any areas that are currently lawn will be restored to lawn, with the exception of where we're adding the native plantings. Also, I should have introduced him sooner, but with me tonight is Mark Amler. He's with Pristine Waters, and it represents the pond dredging company. And as Kathleen can attest to, we've done a number of projects over the years, and they've executed them beautifully. So I'm happy to take any questions, or if you have anything for Mark.
Well, first let's have Mark pull up to the table there so we can get him on mic. That would be great. My questions are largely be for Mark, but did someone else want to go first?
Commission members, questions for Ms. Chalifou and Mark? Angela Jameson, for the record. I'd just like to hear about what challenges there may be in dredging this pond. Is there anything about it that will make it potentially difficult?
So Mark Amler, Pristine Waters. The biggest challenge in this particular project was finding dewatering space for the tubes. The volume is close, and as such, we have kind of shoehorned in tubes that'll fit, but it's going to be a little tight. So I would say that's the biggest challenge. Other than that, the rest of it is pretty straightforward from our perspective.
Thank you.
There we go. Kathleen Holland, for the record. Just can you just give me an idea of timing for this project? When you might start, how long it might take you to do, and if you foresee having to add additional dewatering bags?
I'll start with the last one. Mark Amler, Pristine Waters. start with the last one first. I don't anticipate having to add more dewatering bags. It just may take a little bit longer than it normally would. And quite frankly, I don't really know where I would add them. So I'm pretty much limited to those 2 tubes. Beyond that, I was hoping to start it in early spring. I would anticipate once the areas are prepared, and we can actually start the upland areas where the tubes will go. Anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks being the maximum before we're out of the water and the pond goes back to normal. And then obviously for the dewatering, the geotextile tubes have to spend a little bit longer sitting there to drain out and to dry out before that material can be hauled away cleanly. So figure another month, 2 months.
Depending on the soil and the weather. Tracy mentioned at the front of the presentation that you're not sure exactly which style of dredging you're going to do. Is there a time difference between those 2 types of dredging, whether it's the barge or the diver assisted?
It's, there really isn't going to be a massive time difference there, just because, the confines of the pond are pretty small. This is not a big pond. And, bringing in the hydraulic, the real reason why we would bring in the hydraulic is not so much for productivity or to speed up the process. It's more if the water temperatures are not cooperative. That's a way that we can work and avoid, going into other times of the year to do some work. But my feeling on this pond is if the ability to do it utilizing the diver is available and reasonable and rational, that's probably the way I would want to do this.
Okay.
There's also some submerged boulders and stuff in the pond that make the hydraulic a little less effective.
Okay, good. That's very good information. That
This is Dan Stepanek. Mark, how many truckloads of spoils you think you'll remove from the pond? And where are you going to take them, do you think?
So I actually don't do the offsite removal. I have a partner company that we've worked with actually in New Canaan quite a bit, AMAX, that does that portion of the project. And I can find out where they plan on taking the material, but I don't know off the top of my head. As far as numbers of truckloads, again, I'm going to defer to my collaborative partner just because it really depends on how big a dump truck they bring in to remove the spoils offsite. That said, typically, let's say you're using a triaxle, which I am not saying we're using, to be clear, but figure maybe you get about 10 yards, 12 yards per truck. You're looking at anywhere from 190.
18, yeah. 180 to 360 is our estimate. So
15 to 20 truckloads maximum.
And how deep will it be when you're finished?
I'm sorry?
How deep will the pond be when you're finished?
So on average, the water depth when we're done will be about 4.7 feet. There'll be the deeper end near the spillway will be closer to 8 feet. So yeah.
I just had some comments about Tracy's planting plan. It is robust. The planting plan is pretty fabulous. So thank you to your clients who are wishing to do quite an improvement to the overall look and feel of this pond. Do you anticipate any problems with trying to implement that size of a plan, like in all these different areas throughout?
no, I don't anticipate any issues. I think that it's important that the planting be performed by hand, which, given the size of the trees, I think is very feasible. Sometimes I do write into the plan that a small tracked machine can be used, but honestly, these trees can be handled by ball cart and planted by hand. And then, also the maintenance going forward is important. I think we're planting it robustly enough that it's going to outcompete the invasive vegetation. It's going to keep it at bay, which is a wonderful thing. But it's important that the plants be watered either with a temporary irrigation system or watered by hand until they're established. And I do have this in the notes. And also that they be monitored for deer browse, because as we know, it's not always about what the deer eat, but it's also about what they're doing to the plants. Are they rubbing on them? Are they playing with them? So it needs to be protected with an organic deer spray or some sort of physical barrier until they're established.
Now, do you manage that portion of the job how does that work? Like who?
So
that portion of it?
it's actually optional for the owners, whether they would like my involvement in that. It's written on the plan, so that's what should be done, but so it's sort of a 50-50. Sometimes I'm involved for that, depends upon the client.
This pond reminds me of the one you just finished over on Lambert Road. So remember that one? Well,
I remember.
You finished it a while ago, but we've just really finished it. But anyway, that is maybe a little bit smaller than this one, but that was a tricky location. They had the benefit of a tennis court to use the dew watering bags on. So, and it did come out beautifully. So that worked out very well. And the reestablishment of the shoreline there, it looks very good. This will be much more shoreline establishment going on here, but yeah.
Should last longer too.
Yeah. When do you think this was last dredged?
Not in
Never?
36 years, I'll
Never.
tell you that.
Never. Okay.
Yeah, probably never.
This is pretty filled.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Any more questions or comments for the team? If not, could I hear a motion? Oh, excuse me, before we do that, any special conditions, Kathleen, that you're suggesting?
Sort of our standard condition that we typically do with these types of pond dredging projects where there are landscaping activities. I am recommending that upon completion of landscaping activities, the consultant shall provide a final report certifying compliance with the approved plan.
Very good. So could I hear a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve IW 24-44 with the special conditions from the staff.
I second the motion.
All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, any opposed? So that's passed unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. No charge for the technical assistance.
Thank you, Kathleen.
I learn something every time.
It was my first time, honestly, so.
No, you did just perfect. It's intimidating, I know.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. You're doing very well. 9:12.
Thank you. So item number 10, application IW-24-47, 1 Echo Hill Road, Echo Hill LLC, agent Catherine Throckmorton, Environmental Land Solutions.
Good evening. I'm going to plug this in. I don't trust the battery. So,
Sorry, you have to kind of crawl into the table.
But not very environmentally friendly.
where's our tech? Hey, Kathleen, where's exactly we're supposed to put it?
Just for the record, Kathleen Holland's doing a great job on the tech frontier.
Excuse us.
Sorry, we couldn't help. Hidden part.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
learn from this.
Child locks.
Adult proof.
Yeah, exactly. Adult proof and, all right.
Now, hopefully you will have no trouble sharing your screen.
All right, let me try. Let's see. Where- Almost there. Okay, there we go.
Excellent.
All right. Good evening, everyone. For the record, Kate Throckmorton, licensed landscape architect with Environmental Land Solutions. I'm here with Gina Zero, pond dredger extraordinaire who helped put this plan together. This plan is for 1 Echo Hill Road. It is a rear lot with Echo Hill off to the right. There's a private shared driveway that comes in and kind of splits this property with the pond on the north side of the property and the house and the improvements on the left side on the south side of the driveway. The pond is kind of in a figure 8. It's got a small dam, not really a dam, kind of more a very small impoundment, the weir that helps control the water between the 2 ponds. It is in need of dredging. It's very shallow. The existing conditions are water elevation between 0 and 2 feet deep.
Kate, do you mind turning on the second mic that's in front of you?
Oh.
Yep.
How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you. So most of this material is going to come off site, or some of it is, and some of it is going to be moved off. There is an area on the south portion of the site where we're looking to bring a portion of the material, and the rest of it will be taken off site. On sheet 2 is a little bit clearer enlargement of the area in detail, showing the shared driveway, which kind of runs around the south portion of the pond. This is what I'm calling the upper pond, and then there's this little weir dam. There's also a walkway that leads to this upland area. So we have to do this in 2 sections. Jean can go into it in a little more detail, how that's going to be managed, but there is an existing island. This is all going to be cleaned out. This is almost completely filled in this section. There is a brook, the Guild Brook, that actually runs, you recognize it runs through the site and heads south. So we're going to add a couple of boulders to access this little island, just so you can hop, skip, and jump to that area. There are some existing boulders there today. We're just going to make them a little more stable and accessible. The access points, there's 2 access points, one for the upper pond, one for the lower pond, that are going to have temporary disturbance, and then they're going to be replanted with native shrubs and trees. And then the southeast portion of the pond is going to get a more substantial replanting on that end. The plans have included the details for sedimentation and erosion control, dewatering, cross-sections of the pond, and cross-sections of the spillway that's going to be reconstructed in exactly the same way it was. It's really not holding the water right now. Stones have fallen off of it, so we're just really going to take the stones and reset them with new footings. So I'm going to put this enlarged plan in and allow Jean to go over any details on the execution.
Excuse me, good evening, Gene Nazaro, Nazaro Inc., Reading, Connecticut. The Gears had asked me to be involved in this project. We actually did the one over at 82 Brookwood prior to this project. As Kate had mentioned, the upper pond, I like to call it that, that really functioned as a sediment trap or forebay, if you will. And the rock impoundment area is pretty much, we all saw that deteriorated through flow. Previous years, just normal deterioration. The idea would be to intercept the water from the entrance where it comes into the upper pond, bypass the work area, dewater that, start with the upper pond first. That material, I believe, can be accommodated on site in the spoil area that Kate had indicated on the plan. The remaining material needs to come off site. There is not enough room to accommodate that. The job itself is relatively simple to do routine-wise for us. The impoundment area needs to be reconstructed to the original elevation. There's no advantage to increase it nor decrease that, become a weir activity. And I think that it should be a bit wider than the existing opening now, just to accommodate heavier flows, bigger storm events. Their pond itself will be excavated down to the original depth and shape. Nothing will change as far as that goes. There will be additional well points within the larger pond to facilitate any infiltration of groundwater. That will go through a dirt bag or sediment sack system and allow that water return back to the wetlands. At one point, there needs to be a nano bubbler installed into the larger pond, and that power source will come from the property line of the residence. There's sufficient power that's there, panel box, and there will be a electric service provided below the road for that. And that'll be restored to that. And like I said, degree of difficulty is not the toughest thing about this job. It's a narrow road. Driveway coming in, we're gonna have to have traffic control to accommodate the neighbors and the flow coming in and out with the trucks. It's really to me, that's most difficult part of it and most disruptive for the neighborhood. That just has to be dealt with on a friendly manner. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have that I've not addressed.
So questions, comments from the commission members?
Yep, Beth Sanford, for the record. How long will the whole process take, and meaning how long will the neighbors also be disrupted?
I would say probably 2 weeks, somewhere in that nature. The upper pond, like Kate had mentioned, the island remains. It's got some vegetation on that now. Leave that be. Import some larger stepping stones that will be a couple inches above water line. So it's just user friendly, but it's not a boardwalk going to it. There's a footbridge now that's pretty much needs rebuilding, but it's lasted many years.
Another question is what is the plantings that you're going to have at the south end? Or
Sure. All native plantings along the driveway are going to be winterberry. And then on the south side of the pond, there's going to be, we're going to infill some nyssa and some other shrubs and also include some green giants for some screenings specifically for just one view shed across the pond.
Angela?
Yeah, go ahead. This is Dan Stepanek.
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, please.
Let me ask you, will the trucks be parked on Echo Road? On Echo Road or behind it, or and where will they collect the debris?
Good question, Dan. The upper pond, there's now an existing wall stone wall that's in really disrepair. That needs to be removed so the trucks can at least get off to the side of the road. We need to provide access to the neighbors. So we need to accommodate that area, the upper pond. The lower pond, the larger pond, there is an access road to the south, the driveway that services the remaining part of the property. The trucks can then be staged in that area. The actual equipment will be staged in a curvature between where the driveway splits off, the road splits off and goes to the neighboring property. Go back into there and be loaded and taken off site.
And the trucks come in from the east to the west or from the?
Right, it comes off of Silver Mine
Yeah,
Road.
Silver Mine Road is right off this sheet in this general
Oh, it's
location.
up there. Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like the driveway is like maybe 10, 12 feet wide. It's narrow.
Yeah.
Some of that, I think realistically, I think maybe some of the overhanging limbs should be trimmed back so they're not whacking everything. And you know, the trick to a job like this or any of them is to be respectful and neat. When the job is finished, it's done properly.
Right.
Fortunately, we're celebrating our 80th year in business, our company, so it's try to do it right.
Yeah, Angela Jameson for the record, congratulations on
It's a pretty
reaching
good
that
run.
milestone. Yeah, absolutely. So I recall that we approved a permit to have this pond dredged some years ago
Yes,
now.
I think it was like in 14 maybe.
Right,
something
but
like
that strikes me as kind of really a short period of time for it to need to be re-dredged, or is it just that a lot of ponds, they just wait and wait and wait?
Was the material really removed
Okay,
effectively the first go round? How much was left in there? I don't know the answers to
yeah,
that. I think the biggest problem is the sediment trap or forebay does not function. And I think that my feelings are if you establish that stone weir again, then perhaps the lower pond will be managed with some longevity. The upper pond may need some maintenance over the years. It's really, there's a pretty significant flow that comes through there. We have been visiting the site where it's been dry, and I've seen where it's flown a significant flow. To me, it almost looks like there was a mill of some sort that was, a structure was the intentions of that. Because that wall is pretty significant. That's on the neighboring property. But if you look at historically, it appears as like a mill of some sort.
so this is a man-made pond.
Yes,
Yes.
correct. And there's an outlet that functions very well. There's a valve that's in there now. I am not an advocate of monkeying with that. Let a sleeping dog lie. Don't try to crank it, do anything with it. You're sending your problem of sediment downstream to somebody else. You know, manage within your work area. And the biggest trick to any of these ponds is water management. That's the biggest thing.
I think you may
Yeah,
have,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Dan.
This is Dan. Are you going to retain the policeman from the New Canaan Police Department to help you, or do you have your own crew of the security and the safety and signaling of the cars that come in, the trucks that come in?
The Gears, good question, Dan. The Gears presently have staff that work full-time for them, and I would like to use their services.
It's a private lane
It's
too.
a
There's
private
no-
road, and it's cost-effective. They can provide their own help. I mean, could I provide it? Yes, additional
I
cost.
see. Okay.
I'd rather use their,
Hmm.
that's how my
I don't think
contract
it's
is actually written.
going to
with them.
be a huge, it's not a very, it's a lane. It's not a
It's-
significant
It's
amount.
exactly, it's a country lane, but the thing, my concern is if you have
More
3 or 4 houses
safety.
and cars are coming and going, you have to work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really how I see it.
You were talking about the previous dredging that was done. My recollection, it was a barge dredger. He did not go to the upper pond. He couldn't get in there. So your analysis of that weir not working, that's probably what happened. The upper pond never was.
I think that's my observation.
The
That's the
sediment
biggest
moved
problem.
into
It's just
lower
flow
pond.
coming right through.
Yeah.
If you have significant flow and there's sediment there, it's washing it into the lower pond. And that needs to be done. That's, for my property, I would address that as a very important aspect of it.
Good. Any more questions or comments? Special conditions?
similar to the other pond dredging. It's the same special condition. Because we do have some landscaping activities on this one. And those of you who were on the site visit for this pond, it is really quite vegetated or with very large trees around the backside of the pond. So there's really no reason to do anything additional on the backside. He's not working in that area, he's not disturbing that area. So the plantings that Kate is proposing are appropriate to the restoration of that shoreline there. So I think that's a good plan. And again, I'm not a plan expert, so I do like to have, upon completion of landscaping activities, the consultant shall provide a final report certifying compliance with the approved plan. So that was my only special condition. If you had any others that you'd like to consider.
Any other suggestions? No, may I hear a motion, please?
Beth Sanford, I move that we accept the application IW 2447 with a special condition that Kathleen just suggested in terms of the final report.
Thank you. Seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by
Second.
So I think actually Sandy Redden kind of hit the button first, but thank you. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? No, so the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you so much.
And then just stop sharing, so then we can get our next group up here. Great,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So really want to thank our last applicant for their patience, but if you would just bear with us 5 more minutes so that we can make a strategic break. Good. So I think we're ready to resume at 9:36. So now we have item number 11, application IW-24-48, 3 Farm Road, Waveney Care Centre, Town of New Canaan. And once again, many thanks for your patience as we have proceeded through this evening's business so far.
Thank you.
But now you have the floor.
Members of the commission, Michael Sweeney, I'm a partner with Carmody Torrance, Sandak and Hennessy. I'm pleased to be here this evening on behalf of Waveney Care Center. Before I introduce our team again to any details, I think I'm just going to turn over to Mr. Russ Barksdale. He's the president and CEO of Waveney Life Care to tell you a little bit about what's going on and introduction to the application.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, commissioners. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure to meet, I'm Russ Barksdale, President and CEO of Waveney Life Care Network and all of its subsidiaries. I'm also a fellow commissioner with serving on Health and Human Services, so I deeply appreciate the dedication you bring to these proceedings. Entering into our 51st year of operations, our nonprofit network now serves over 1,000 patients, residents, and clients each and every day. As such, we have a unique perspective on the healthcare needs of the town and our beloved community. Tonight, we seek your approval to add 30 private rooms to our renowned 5-star care center, alongside significant infrastructure improvements and enhanced patient and visitor experiences. This expansion, we believe, is critical for New Canaan. First, demand consistently exceeds our capacity. Today's hospital discharges are more acutely ill. They require advanced therapies and specialized care before they can return home safely. Without sufficient capacity at Waveney, too many must settle for facilities that weren't their first choice or even local. Second, post-pandemic, our community's demand for a private room has never been greater. You may be surprised that currently the care center only houses 12 private rooms. This expansion comes at a critical time and a crucial time in healthcare. 3 Connecticut hospitals have recently declared bankruptcy. 15 skilled nursing facilities have closed due to staffing shortages or financial challenges. And 1 in 3 33% of our residents will now require inpatient skilled nursing services in their lifetime. Our center consistently delivers exceptional care. We maintain a 5-star staffing level without using agency or travel nurses. Our innovative nursing school ensures a steady pipeline of skilled caregivers, while our navigator service provides 24/7 guidance for families managing complex insurance and care decisions. Our design plan carefully addresses both operational needs and community considerations. We're adding parking spaces to improve accessibility for our visitors. We're protecting existing wetlands through site planning. We are utilizing architectural elements and mechanical upgrades that enhance even our existing facilities. And we've held multiple community on-site meetings to address their concerns in a proactive way. As a nonprofit, we serve as a crucial healthcare safety net for New Canaanites. Some of you may know that we provide charitable care when needed, supporting residents whose extended care needs and longevity far exceed their financial resources. This equates to millions of dollars of free or discounted rates per year. This expansion will strengthen our ability to fulfill this vital community role and safety net for so many. Our quality metrics are well documented. And so on behalf of my staff, I'm very proud of those. And I'd like to just mention just a few. Consistently, we are the 5-star rated Medicare provider, and that includes our nursing staffing levels. We've received 2 leading age awards for innovation and social accountability. We received recognition for the Connecticut Assisted Living Association for staff retention, which is the best in the industry. And just recently, we received the inaugural PRISM Award for social stewardship from a nationally recognized market network. We are deeply rooted in New Canaan. I live here, we live here, we work here, and we serve our community with great dedication and pride. With your support for this expansion, we can continue innovating and improving timely healthcare access for all of our neighbors. Thank you for your full consideration. Thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Russ. And I live here too, and which is even more of a pleasure that I can assist in any way possible with your application. Also with us this evening is Dan Chappell, sitting to my left, my colleague Ed Carmody. They'll be running the slides, which I'm capable of doing, so thanks, Dan, for that. Greg Biancardi of Amenta Emma Architects is with us. He's designed a lovely addition to the building, which we can speak to as well if you have any interest in that. And Kurt Lowenstein, who will probably be doing the bulk of our presentation at Atlantic Surveyors and Engineers. He's here also with Anthony Zemba. Kurt will speak to the engineering, civil engineering, and the layout of the site plan. Anthony can speak, he's a soil scientist, he'll speak to the characterization of the property and measures that have been taken to protect the wetlands. Lastly, Tom Cross of West Stoughton Associates. He can speak to the landscaping and other protections and screening that have been adopted with this plan. So just briefly, before I turn it over to Kurt, I'll mention a few things. On notices, the Waveney property is actually not a property line, it's a lease line. It was adopted as part of the original Waveney zone back in 1996. And really the Waveney zone isn't used that often, but there was discussion at the time whether to actually include Waveney Life Care within the Waveney zone. Eventually it was determined that the town would include it within the zone. So that's why the application speaks to the Waveney zone. However, it's not a freestanding property. It's a lease line. There's an existing lease with the town of New Canaan. It's essentially a ground lease. And if you know ground leases, it's essentially almost pure ownership of the property but it's not ownership, it's a lease line. So when we did our notices, we had the quandary, do we just do notices around our lease line, which really probably wouldn't be appropriate, or the entire Waveney site of 200 acres or so. We took the latter. So we sent notices out to everyone around the whole Waveney property, 200 acres. On top of that, Russ and his board reached out ahead of time to all the neighbors around the property. So beyond the 100-foot zone, which is a statutory notice requirement, we sent out notices to within 500 feet. And Russ and the board, along with the team, had 3 meetings, November 8, 9, November 19 of last year, where questions were posed by neighbors. I think they were all responded to adequately, I hope. The nature of the property as well is that it's a fairly confined property. Although it's 12 acres, about a third of the property is a designated wetlands. So the nature of the application is really kind of twofold. One is to restore a man-made pond, which is in disrepair, to be enhanced to be more functioning. Kurt will speak to that. And also because of the 30 additional beds, there'd be 30 additional parking spaces. And because of the tight configuration of the property, a portion of some of those 30 spaces will encroach into the upland review area. So I think those are the 2 themes that you have before you this evening. So with that, with your permission, I'll turn it over to Kurt Lowenstein.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Kurt Lowenstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Connecticut with Land Tech. Our offices are located in Westport in the downtown area. We were retained by the Waveney Care Center to provide the site civil and environmental components of this project. As Russ so eloquently said, there's a major need for this type of use in the community and Waveney itself. So this expansion, primarily, if Dan, if you could bring up the site layout plan, if you go one, there you go, perfect. You'll see the grade area is the proposed expansion. Portions of the existing structure where those of you that went to the site walk saw where the turnaround is for the drop-off loop, that portion will be demolished, as well as a small portion for orientation purposes. North is to the left side of the page, and then east is towards the top of the page. So on the western side of the existing structure, as you come in, piece of that will be demolished to allow for this new beautiful addition to be put on, which we do have some pictures later if you're interested. Part of the addition, as Mike said, we will need some additional parking spaces. So there will be a parking expansion that will span as you come in from the same entry to the south, which will wrap around towards the southern portion of the building. That's the bulk of our work that'll.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Can you zoom in? That would be great. It's better for me. I don't know about anyone else. Okay,
perfect. Don't worry, we're going to move on to the more zoomed in plans shortly.
Yeah.
So the bulk of the area within the regulated area is this parking expansion around the western side of the existing structure. And Dan, if you could pan up to the upper corner, upper left-hand corner, there is a small parking expansion that will be going on in the area commonly known as Claire's Garden. Portions of that will be reconfigured, and there'll be some additional parking over there to provide better access. That's not within any regulated area, but this project is kind of broken up into what I think of as 3 components. We have the small parking expansion to the northeast. We've got the bulk of the development, which is the addition and this parking expansion. And then the last piece we'll touch on is the southeastern courtyard and wetland filling / creation. So Dan, if you could go to the next slide, I'd like to speak to the stormwater management of the site. Perfect. So currently the property does not have any kind of treatment stormwater wise, but it does have an extensive parking lot that does have numerous catch basins that collects just about all of the water, the runoff for the existing parking area. There's also a series of internal roof leaders from the building that all gets collected together into one kind of single point. And Dan, if you can zoom in on the lower left-hand corner where the driveway entrance is, and then just pan down slightly. Perfect. So right to the right of the driveway as you come into the site, there is a small wetland pocket there, and there is a series of pipes that all connect to a single manhole, and then it discharges into that small pocket wetland. From what I can tell, looking at the historic plans for this property, it looks like there was a lot of thought and intention put into this piece that was actually intended to be a sediment forebay. So I'll speak to this a little bit later, but that we've kind of taken that and we're going to expand upon it with our drainage design. But right now, I'd say 97% of the water on the site from the building and the parking areas all make its way into this little pocket wetland. There is an existing mortared stone head wall there with a culvert that runs through it, and that stormwater eventually makes its way into the broader wetland corridor, which you see, which is to the south of the existing facility. There are areas that will sheet flow into the wetlands, but predominantly everything's being direct piped into that wetland there. We are certainly expanding the impervious area on the site, but we are providing a tremendous amount of underground infiltration for this, and that will help twofold. The first piece, especially when we're talking about a wetland sensitive property like this, is the water quality treatment of it. There's a daisy chain system, which you can see, Dan, if you pan a little bit to the right, you can see the extent of it. There'll be a new retaining wall that'll be constructed to facilitate this expansion of the parking area. That retaining wall will be within the upland review area, and we'll be constructing the new stormwater system, which, as I said, is a daisy chain system, meaning you have 3 or 4 chunks of units, and they're all interconnected with pipes so that as water is filled into them, it can all equalize throughout and act as one unit, essentially. We've done this to work with the topography of the site and the shape of the expansion. In total, there's 144 units that'll be put in. As I mentioned, the water quality volume treatment in accordance with the new 2024 state stormwater quality manual are being met. It also is matching the peak and volume for the 100-year and smaller storm events. So there's a tremendous benefit to this project, albeit we are working within a regulated area, but we are really reducing the amount of stormwater runoff that makes its way into this wetland. We're collecting it, we're treating it, and then we're metering it out in a very controlled manner. We are aware of some known flooding issues on 106, not directly related to this property, but when we met with the town very early on, one of the requests was, what can you guys do to try to help reduce this issue? Even though it's not your fault, but this is an opportunity to do it. And we've gone really above and beyond here with the amount of stormwater detention that we're doing. Not just for the new impervious areas, but we are collecting portions of existing impervious area from the building and from some parking areas that direct it down into our stormwater system. In addition to what we're collecting, the existing parking area that is not being touched, we're also going to route that through what's called a hydrodynamic separator, which will provide water quality treatment for all the existing parking areas that right now are just dumping into the wetlands. The small sediment forebay is great for that, but there's no treatment currently. And this will provide a tremendous benefit to that existing area. Again, this isn't something that's required. This is something that we're taking an extra step forward, considering the amount of wetlands on this property. The same goes for the northeastern parking expansion. That also will have a treatment, hydrodynamic treatment separator for it to treat that stormwater. I'm going to touch briefly on the utilities, the sanitary sewer, although it's not within the purview necessarily of your commission. There is an existing pump station. So Dan, if you can flip 2 slides over. And sorry, one more. So you may know there is an existing pump station located within the wetland areas. This has been there, as far as I can tell, since the facility was originally built 50 plus years ago. We did investigate the possibility of, is there, Kathleen had asked us early on, is there a way to get the pump station out of the wetlands? We did investigate that. And the conclusion that we came to is to remove the amount of additional disturbance, because there is a force main that runs from that pump station, essentially, call it plan north up the page for what you're looking there through the Waveney property. We would need to trench through the wetlands, remove pipe, and almost became more damage than good by removing it. So the good news, the pump station itself is in very good working order. The Waveney Care Center has done a tremendous job of keeping it, the upkeep on it. They have a professional company that's on call that has been servicing it for over 15 years. One of the comments in the engineering letter that we received last week was asking for details on the sanitary sewer pump station itself. We're waiting to get some information back from the pump servicer or the station servicer as far as logs go and some of the finer details that he knows. And I'd like to have that all included in one report rather than piecemealing it. So we would request that piece allow us to work with Maria's office and DPW and the sewer department as a condition of approval should you decide to allow us to move forward.
Sorry to interrupt, this is Angela Jameson, but as we're talking about the sanitary pump, could you perhaps just put your cursor where it is currently?
Sure.
On the map?
Perfect, right there, Dan. If you just move a little to your left, that's the pump station right there.
Right.
So all of the sewage from the facility there's a couple of different points where it comes, but all coincides at a manhole just to the left of what's on the screen now. So Dan, if you pan over slightly. And a little bit more, perfect. So as you go up the left-hand corner there, there's a manhole that you may have seen. It was staked in the field during the site walk. Everything kind of collects at that manhole, and then one single pipe connects to the pump station that's down in the wetlands.
That's what the lifespan, the general lifespan of the pump station is. I mean, I know you said it's in good working condition, but what is the expectation in terms of when would that need to be replaced?
With good upkeep on the pump station, I mean, I wouldn't be able to put a firm number on it. What I would say is, as long as you're maintaining it, it should last 75 years if you wanted to put a fair number on it. The biggest thing with the pump station is not the structure itself, it's the pumps. That's usually what goes first. And because they have a licensed professional that's on call and is doing regular maintenance on it, I won't go too into the weeds on it, but they have a two pump system, meaning that one's operating, there's always one in reserve that's down in the pump station. And then they also have a third pump that's just sitting ready to go. If, say, scheduled maintenance and then they take one offline, they can put that third pump in there. So there's a lot of redundancy built into this pump station. I suspect because of the location of it, when they originally built it, they figured, if we're going to build this, we're going to build it once and not have to get back in there. So we'll definitely be providing those details, and that can be, part of the record. We just would request that you give us, as a condition of approval, to provide that to you. Sanitary wise, we're not changing much. Obviously there's additional flow from the new addition, the 30 beds. But that's the primary piece as it relates to inland wetlands. That pump station is in good order. We will provide the logs for it, but we're not proposing to make any changes within the pump station itself or within the regulated area. All work for the sanitary piece will happen outside of your regulated area.
Just want to take a break. Is there any questions you had? I saw Angela, your chairman. Was there any questions at all at this point?
Not at this point. I just thought it was good to get the actual location pointed out while we were discussing it. So thank you for that. I
Thank you.
apologize for the interruption.
No.
Please continue.
No, it's a good break. It's a good break. So you know, the stormwater piece we've touched on some of the sanitary sewer. The last piece that I want to touch on is now moving towards the southeastern courtyard, and that's where the wetland filling and creation is going to happen. I'm going to let Anthony speak to the details of the wetland creation, but there are some stormwater enhancements that we're providing with that. So Dan, if you can, I think it should be if you go one more and one more. Perfect. So currently, for those that were on the site walk, there is an existing man-made pond that is in the rear off the southeast. There's a small courtyard that's accessible for the residents. Because we're losing a big piece of that outdoor space with the parking expansion, this is a critical component of for the facility, providing that outdoor space for the residents. Russ was adamant with us that we needed to find a new place to amenity space for the residents. So part of that, we looked at the existing man-made pond. It's not in good condition right now. It's not functioning as it was intended. There are a few roof leaders that do discharges dump right into it with no treatment measures of any kind. And what we're proposing to do is fill that in, and then further down the slope adjacent to the wetlands where it can function more properly, create a new wetland area. It'll be larger in size. So just for a comparison, we're at roughly 2,300 square feet is the existing pond, and the new wetland creation area that we're proposing is just shy of 3,200 square feet. So more than a 1-to-1 ratio of creation to filling. This new wetland that we're creating will also be equipped with 2 sediment forebays. So like we talked about with the stormwater component in the front of the property, where we have the small sediment forebay, this new wetland on either side will be flanked by a sediment forebay, which will receive the roof leaders from the existing building that's happening now, but untreated. Now we've designed these in accordance with the new Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. So it will provide water quality treatment. It'll also slow down the water and cool the water before it enters into the larger wetland corridor and the new wetlands. There'll be, we haven't decided whether it'll be an earthen berm or a boulder berm that'll separate the forebays from the main ponding area, as you would see in a traditional, if you had a sediment forebay and then a larger pond. You've seen 2 applications for dredging, so the makeup is similar to this. And it's really important to not just move the wetland and plan it nicely, but make sure that it's properly functioning. So with that, I don't want to steal Anthony's thunder and let him speak to some of the really great enhancements that we're doing with it.
Yes, good evening. I'm Anthony Zemba. I'm a senior ecologist and soil scientist with Land Tech, offices at 518 Riverside Avenue in Westport. Same company as Kurt. In addition to those enhanced functions that Kurt has mentioned for the stormwater management, we have increased a number of different attributes of this created wetland that will enhance its wildlife function, its aesthetics value, and other attributes. Of course, they're all native plantings that we picked to plant this area. We chose 7 different tree species, 8 different shrub species. This variety was selected for a number of different reasons. We have both upland plants and wetland plants, so that we have a planted upland buffer in addition to the planted wetland area. This effectively will kind of seal the edge of the disturbed area, which helps to keep invasives from penetrating into the adjacent existing large wetland complex next to it. These specimens, there's 67 different specimens that you can see on that plan. They provide cover, concealment, and food for a variety of wildlife species. They also provide blooms for pollinators. We selected species that will be blooming throughout the growing season. Beginning in March with red maples and pussy willow, and then progressing through April, May, June. Different species start flowering at different times, right down through the summer and into even November with the witch hazel. So in addition to all of that, we have selected species that have an aesthetic appeal that will benefit the members of or residents of Waveney. The blooms in of themselves are aesthetically pleasing, but also the fall foliage of some of the species will be quite striking. And then we even have hollies for wintertime to add some evergreen cover and aesthetic value. So these native species should do very well at the site. They were selected not only for those attributes that I mentioned, but also for the soil conditions there, for the biogeographical range that they are typically found in. And many of them have some inherent deer browse resiliency as well. So all those factors combined together should really provide for a visually striking planting and one that provides enhanced wildlife attributes and values to the site.
All right, at this point, I'd like to bring Tom Cross up from West Stout Associates, and he'll speak to more of the hardscapes and the overall landscaping, some of the buffer aspects of it. Thank you very much. Unless there's any other questions related to the civil side or environmental before we move on. Otherwise, we can do questions at the end.
Does anybody have any questions at this point, or?
I can hold them.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, we'll try and ask our questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and keep this brief. Tom Cross.
Just hit your mic.
Yeah, just grab the mic.
Yeah,
push hard, push hard.
Gotcha. Thank you. Tom Cross, landscape architect with Wesley Stout Associates, representing the Waveney Care Center, and we're located 96 Main Street in New Canaan, Connecticut, right across the street. Like I said, I'll try and keep it brief. The first slide here, this is an overall landscape plan rendering that we have prepared. And, really for the site, there's 4 big components. There's the new building addition, the expanded parking lots that include the drainage and the drainage improvements, as well as the courtyard improvements in Claire's courtyard, as well as the southeast corner, and the new wetlands creation that Anthony just mentioned. But I like to focus on 2 of those areas, which are the south parking lot, as well as the southeast courtyard, because they're adjacent to the wetland areas. The next slide, please. This is an enlargement of the front entry and the south parking lot area. If you can see on the bottom left, there's a white filled existing site retaining wall. And then to the right of that, in the bottom right-hand corner, that is the proposed retaining wall that we need to install, as Russ mentioned, to provide a parking lot for 30 new beds and 30 new parking spaces, and make it accessible to the front, new front door and new front entry. Below that, those would be the new wetland plantings, and below them, we would remove the debris and invasive plants and replace them with all native plantings to reestablish this disturbed edge, as well as use an overlay seed mix to fill in any of the gaps. Now, the plant palette will be 100% native along this edge, but then as we get closer to the buildings and the building foundations, we'll use a combination of native and adaptive plantings. So anything below the wall would be native, as well as those red maples, and any ground covers in the parking lot would be along that edge would be native. But then when we get closer to the buildings, it would be a combination. Next slide. The next slide is just some character images of the different plant materials that we would use: birches, red maples, nissas, the ground covers. Some of these are above the wall and below the wall. Some images that are below the wall and not on here are amelanchiers, spice bush, clethra, winterberry, as well as Virginia creeper vines. The next slide. And then the other area that's adjacent to the wetlands is this courtyard in the southeast corner. Actually, in the parking lot where we have the turnaround, that is an existing courtyard now, and Waveney is losing a lot of outdoor amenity spaces that are required for a facility of this type. And so we need to expand this one a little bit, as well as improve the wetland and bioswale function. So what we've done is create a pollinator garden and courtyard concept. And so to the top right corner, those darker green areas, those are the combination of native shrubs and trees that Landtech is proposing. And then that multicolored area that's in the bioswale, that'd be a combination of native grasses and pollinator perennials. And then we're going to carry that theme into the courtyard. So you'll notice that there's a clear line in between the two. That's because the courtyard area needs to be fenced in with a 6-foot-high fence for security purposes. But on the inside of the courtyard, you're going to see that multicolored hatch again. That's going to be the pollinator garden inside of the courtyard. So we're trying to blend the two, but also have that security and separation. That pollinator garden will be 100% native on the inside of the courtyard. And then again, as we get closer to the building foundation and patio, it's going to be a combination of native and adaptive plantings. The next slide, that shows, again, some more character images of what that courtyard's going to look and feel like, as well as some of the plant materials outside of the courtyard. And then that's the last slide for the landscape. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. So do we have any more presentations here?
Perhaps we'll leave it up to you. We have our architect present. If you're interested in seeing what the building's going to look like, it's a lovely structure. It's out of the wetlands, but maybe a few minutes to give you a sense of the addition.
Sure. I mean, I think briefly, but that would be great. Thank you.
Great.
Good evening. Greg Biancardi from Mementa Emma Architects. And okay, so the building, first when we set out to do this, the existing facility has to stay open 100% during construction. So seeing that, the one place to put the building was basically in front of the building, and that's why it's landing somewhat in front of the parking lot. This is a view as you approach a building coming up to the building. It's sitting, the 30 rooms have to be on one level. So they're on the second floor. The bottom floor of the building is basically a drop off covered by the building, and then a glass lobby that shows through to the gardens in between the new building and the existing building. You can go on to the next couple pages. So here you can see where that 30-bed bar is placed over the lobby area and some of the administration spaces. In between that building and the existing building is a healing garden, approximately 20 feet wide by 80 feet long, an area for some of the residents to come down and get some exercise in that courtyard. It also helps us with separation from the existing structure for fire separation purposes and so on. The next building, or the next, again, this is a view of the building. Go ahead. Next. And then just a few other images of the building as you approach from Farm Road coming up to the building. And then what you'll see, actually, I can't even see that now. But another view of the building from the street, and then from above. The next slides. These are in closer to the building, again at the entrance lobby, looking below the beds, through the lobby to the garden, the healing garden beyond, and then some of the images of the healing garden that's inside that courtyard space. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I just ask you one quick question? Do you have any green technology involved in your?
We do. The existing facility has, the roof has solar panels over the entire facility. And this building will also have solar panels across the entire facility. And, you know, there's various upgrades in terms of code and so on, you know, in terms of insulation and so on. We're going above code to insulate the building, so it should be much more efficient.
Good. So, commission members, you have questions, please, comments?
Angela, I have just a general question, just for my own edification. Who owns the property across the street on Farm Road? Does the Waveney Care Center own that?
The town.
Oh, the town owns that.
There's a little pie-shaped wedge right on the other side of Farm Road. If you
Yeah.
will, that's owned by the town. And it's mostly wetlands over on that side.
It is mostly wetlands, okay.
Yes, sir.
Have you thought of going up more than out on this piece of on this new architecture?
Leo Carl, I've been in the Waveney local resident and been board chair, and I'm chairing this building committee. And I will tell you that it's been over a year that we've worked on this project to try to figure out how to fit the 30 beds. This goes back to coming out of COVID. The demand has been there. The state's had a moratorium on adding rooms to senior rehab facilities, interestingly enough, because there's excess capacity around the state. However, there's a shortage in Fairfield County. Russ is very good at writing letters and persuaded the state to give us a license to add 30 beds. That's how this 30 number came about. People have asked, why don't you build 90? As a resident, and knowing how issues can become lightning rod, I will say that as we looked at different designs, we looked at height, and I personally felt like height was going to be an obstacle on this site because it's directly across the sight line from the high school, across the playing fields, and Waveney Park. So we strategically decided to keep the height variance off the table and try to work with the land as we have it. And this is probably Amenta Emma probably did close to a dozen iterations of buildings on the site, moving the mass around in pieces. Operationally, for Ross and his team, it makes a lot more sense to have 30 rooms on one floor than having 15 on the first floor and 15 on the second floor, because you have to have a nurse on the floor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. On weekends and holidays, it makes it hard when you've got two separate floors. So for staffing reasons and just general servicing of the rooms, it makes it a lot more feasible to have them all on one floor. That's how we ended up at this design. So hopefully that answers your question, Dan.
Yes. It does.
Beth Sanford, I think you had a question.
Yes, it was mentioned that you're creating a new part of the wetlands, and I couldn't see where that was on the map.
Dan, can you pull up the blow up of that? That would be that wetland blow up exhibit.
Actually, go back to the yeah, and then zoom in on that. It probably shows better, honestly, maybe on Tom's drawing, the render drawing, then you can see the color differential. It'll pop out a lot easier. That one. Yep, and then zoom in all the way. So you see the lighter strip that divides the two colored areas, the two planted areas. The one to the right, that would be directly adjacent to the wetlands. That's the wetland creation area. So the two, what almost look like socks on the two ends, those are the sediment forebays. And then the main body of the wetland creation is the rendered center piece of it.
Do you want to just put your mouse over what he's referring to?
Not showing up. See that green?
The brighter green?
That looks like lawns slashed down the middle.
Yeah.
What's to the top side of that, to the right?
To the
side of
top
that?
right, yeah.
Where does the number 285, 286, 287?
If it would be easier, if you would allow me to approach, I could show you.
I think there's actually a better drawing that describes it. If you go to your survey, your property survey, and maybe Anthony could just back up. This is what I was going to ask you to do, because I think that's the part that's missing a little bit, is your evaluation of the existing pond, and maybe we could show that, and then the creation of the bio. I think that's right. That's what I think we.
So for the
Oh,
existing,
wow.
Dan,
Cool.
let's back up to the survey.
So, I mean, maybe just first tell us what you've ringed here, as you've ringed it very nicely. What are we looking at here?
That's the wetlands creation area.
Right. Okay, got it.
And that's to offset the existing, which we're gonna go to right
Right.
now and show you on the survey
yes.
where that is. So Dan, if you could pull up the existing conditions.
But when you say you wetlands creation area, what are you doing to actually create the wetlands?
A new basin will be Anthony Zumba from Land Tech. A new basin will be constructed in the area that was just shown there, outlined in red, which is very close and actually overlaps the existing pond that's there. The new one is bigger. It's similarly shaped so that it is a depressing area, a bowl area. And the two sediment forebays are on either end to replicate the discharge of roof drains that collect water from the building roof on that side.
So you're essentially creating a pond.
This won't really be a pond. The original wetland sea may have been at one time, since it was constructed. Essentially has filled in with organic matter and was overrun with invasive vegetation. So it didn't look like much maintenance had been done towards the end there. I think originally, I can't speak for when it was originally created, but I think originally it was supposed to be like, have some kind of aesthetic value. And then as the ring of vegetation grew up around it, you could no longer really see the pond from the garden outside and the patio. So without really being able to see that pond, it kind of was just left to its own fruition.
I just want to make sure we understand. We're not real pond.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. We've
Yeah.
had people talking about ponds.
Right.
This is the real pond. This is just a big bioswale. This is the big hole in the, like a meteor hit it almost. And I think at one time back in the history, it had water in it, but it has just been bone dry, and whatever water retains in it, retains in it. I just want to make sure when people say pond, it's not
Right.
not a pond.
Yeah. I mean, I had to flag it because it you know, it had wetland soils in there, and you know, the man-made is actually in the definition for wetland, Connecticut wetlands. So it met those two criteria. So other than that, you know, it really wasn't serving many other functions.
As Mr. Carl said, this project and this concept, we've been noodling over for about a year with town staff here. We've had multiple meetings with the team from Land Tech mostly, and the conundrum of what to do with this pocket in the back here. Anthony Zeman and I did meet at the site, you know, at their request to kind of like, well, let's take a look at this thing and figure out what it is. He's the credentialed certified soil scientist, so he appropriately flagged it as a wetlands, as he said. So it's not a pond. You're right. I mean, don't picture it like it's sitting there with a full stream of water.
Do you have a picture?
Most of you have gone to the site visit. We did walk around that area. It was bitter cold, so we took a real quick look.
Yeah.
It truly is not functioning properly. And as part of their design concept, as they explained to you, the incorporation or the abandonment of this area in order to make it a functioning concept for the utilization of the clients at the property. I think it's a very creative solution, as I wrote in my staff report, to kind of accommodating, filling in the nuisance or abandoning the nuisance and actually adjoining a created wetlands next to a very high functioning, much larger wetland. So but I think that's where maybe they're not really completely understanding. Maybe the engineering plan will show that as well. So I know there's plans in here that I read through that do demonstrate kind of how what the final look of it will be, or you know, between Tom's plan and the engineering plan.
Then let's zoom in on the complete piece.
Kathleen, this is Dan. Have we ever done that before in the Wetlands Commission?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, I thought that question might come up, so I was prepared. Top of West Road, we had one about, I'm going to say, a year and a half ago. It was very similar to this. A non-functioning had been created as a pond. It ceased to function properly. Kate Throckmorton and team put a proposal together and did do partial filling and alteration of that pond, very similar to this. So yes, that's just most recently. I'm pretty sure we've had others as well.
But it wasn't this big though, I don't think, was it?
No, it was about the same size, my recollection.
Size? Yeah.
This one, Dan, I don't think you were able to go on the site visit. This is not that large.
It wasn't, no. Oh.
Yeah, it's like 2,200 square feet, something like that, under existing conditions. And we're proposing one that's 3,000, just shy at 3,200 square feet.
So this is the drawing, I think, is the most descriptive. If someone wants to walk through.
So
that.
yeah, let me walk you through the engineering piece of it, and then Anthony can elaborate on some of the functions and value aspect of the wetland. So what we're looking at is a depression that'll be created here. So there will be some grading along the edge. On either side of it, so on the northern or the upper side and the lower side, for the sake of argument, plan north, those two areas will be what are called a sediment forebay. That sediment forebay is intended to receive the downspouts from the existing building and provide treatment. There's an extensive manual or section of the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual that outlines how to design these things. We've designed these two pieces of this new creation to function for the value of stormwater treatment. And then we've coupled that with the environmental enhancement of what a wetland provides. As I said, we'll be creating a depression there. don't think of it as a many feet deep pond type of situation. It's not going to be a standing water type of situation, but it's going to be established with wetland plants. And I'll let Anthony speak to the details of them and how that meets the function and values when he went through his assessment versus the existing versus now what the proposed is and how there's the benefit there. So do you want to?
Yeah, so under existing conditions, basically what you have is a plustrian emergent core that's surrounded by plustrian scrub shrub fringe. And the emergent core is mainly Phragmites. That's the dominant plant out there, common reed, with a couple sedges mixed in where they can. And then the dominant plant around the shrub fringe was willow and some red maple in the tree layer towards the east side. So what we've done is spec'd out plants that can recreate that structural diversity and have a tree layer, a shrub layer. And one of the details I inadvertently left out when I first spoke, we do have a seed mix that's proposed for the bottom of the basin proper. And that seed mix includes a number of different grasses and forbs that are wetland plants. And again, many of the forbs are flowering plants that will add additional pollinator value, as Tom mentioned. So things like swamp milkweed and blue flag iris and things like that. So again, aesthetic value, pollinator value, and then, making sure that we have coverage of all soil surface to provide, the sediment retention and, nutrient absorption functions of the wetland as well.
Beth Sanford, what are you going to do with the invasives, the Phragmites? Are you going to try to get rid of that?
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do that so that we're not in the same situation again.
Yeah.
As the area gets excavated out to create the basin, we'll probably have to, treat that soil somehow or ship it off site. There is specifications for planting medium, and that will have to come from a certified source so that there's no rootstock from the Phragmites reused on site.
Does that mean you'll be using herbicide?
Every tool in the quiver of invasive control needs to be assessed for an appropriate eradication and control program. The benefit of starting from a clean slate is that, if you impart your control measures early, you usually don't have to resort to an herbicide. It's after you get an extensive stand that takes over, then you're really left with no choice at that point aside from excavation. So if we come up with a program to monitor and to impart some effective control from the very beginning, we may not have to use the herbicide.
Thank you.
This is Angela Jameson for the record. I had questions related to the construction and in particular the additional car parking space, because that's going to be in the upland review area. Could you perhaps just speak to the measures you're going to take during the construction period to make sure that there's no damage caused to the wetlands?
Yes. Yeah, go for it. And Dan, if you want to bring up that logistics plan that I sent you from FIP, I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. That was one of the comments that we received as well. So while we don't have a final plan, we do have some preliminary details, and Russ can certainly fill in from the facility side.
Sure. During the construction and the phasing of operations, we have an agreement with the school system to have off-site parking during construction. We also have unanimous approval from Parks and Rec to use the Steve Banco pool parking area when it's not in operation. So we have already looked at having off-site parking so that we can have two entrances, one coming through Claire's Garden for our memory care unit, which we identified earlier. The other one coming from the south side right into the lobby of the existing skilled nursing facility. So we'll have two entrances in full operation during construction period, and then we'll have off-site parking either at the school when the school's not in session or at Steve Banco Pool. And we have both approvals, unanimous approval from Park and Rec, as well as a letter from the school system for off-site parking. So that's how we're going to be handling the parking and not having to use any other part of the campus for excess parking. Hope that answered your question.
Well, I was thinking also in relation to when you're actually constructing the additional parking spaces, you'll have to do work, and just want to, talk through what the measures are you're going to take to make sure that none of the actual construction activities and debris gets anywhere near the wetlands.
Okay, sure. We have
So we already have a construction company on board.
It's up on the.
And they've put together a preliminary phasing plan, which they've broken down into currently 3 phases. The project is going to be constructed in one shot, but because of the tightness of the site, it needs to be broken up into, they're going to be continuous phases. Generally speaking, the silt fence and hay bales that we're depicting on our site plan, on our soil erosion control plan, will be the limits of disturbance. And we don't anticipate, in the conversations we've had with the construction company, of needing to expand the current disturbance limit that we have shown. So the first phase that FIP has prepared is kind of the enabling phase. As Russ stated, we need to have the facility up and running at all times. So we can't cut off the main drop-off loop where the new addition is going to go. So the first and most important piece of this is getting the retaining wall built and getting at least a temporary area for parking. So that's what that large red bubble is at the bottom there. That's part of the enabling phase. And same thing goes in towards the northern or the upper portion of the plan, that smaller red area. That's where they'll be demolishing portions of the outdoor courtyard. And that, as you'll see when we move into the second phase, will be where entrances will be provided. So we're building this entrance along the lower corridor, so that now, Dan, if you move to the next slide, now we're getting into demolition and cutting off of that main drop-off loop. So the lower, almost teardrop gray bubble towards the bottom, that's now our new temporary access. The retaining wall is built. We have at least a binder down, so we have a solid surface to drive on. And the two T shapes, so there's at the end of the turnaround on the lower drop-off, there's that small T shape. That's where the temporary entrance will be provided during construction. And then similarly on the upper portion where the temporary drop-off will be established, that will be another temporary entrance. During that time, the red area there, that's where all the construction activity is happening. The building is obviously being built in a portion of that, and then the parking lot, which would be the lower edge running along the farm road there, that's where the contractor staging area and parking, they'll be limited. And so, as Russ said, we've been working to create opportunities offsite to keep as few cars on site as possible. Obviously, we need to maintain some parking for folks that are accessing the facility and visitors. And then they'll keep their personnel, the construction personnel, as limited as possible within that red bubbled area. And then if we move on to the third, that will be perfect. So that'll be once the building now is going up, and then we're transitioning to a smaller space, still that north, just to the, what would be to the left of the main body of the new addition. That will still be used as the primary staging area. And then we'll gain more access around the bottom side. But the key takeaway here is, like I said, this is preliminary. As we move through permitting, we'll firm this up, and we can certainly provide your commission and staff with that as it evolves. But the key piece is that we've established a limit of disturbance on our site plans with the silt fence and hay bale lines. And there's no reason that we'll need to encroach beyond that. There's many other measures that we'll be utilizing to keep folks off site so that we have sufficient staging to complete the project. Does that get to what you were looking for?
Yep, that was what I was looking for. Thank you. So the other issue I wanted to raise is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Carrie.
What is the timeline? It's Beth Sanford, for the record. What is the timeline of each one of the phases?
So if you go back, we're hoping to start the first phase around the fall, winter of 2025, the early 2026. Yeah, it's on the board. It's on the bottom. It's 4 to 5 months for phase one, and then it is another 16 months for the full construction. On top of that 4 or 5 month period of time.
So all in all, we're looking at like a 2 to 3 year,
23, 24 months total period of time in these different stages, getting the parking off the site as much as we can. Again, hope you can see this. We've been working on this for about a year. There's a lot when you have a limited site, thinking about where the parking is going to go, what the wetlands are going to look like, what is outdoor spaces, how can you remain open 24/7, how's emergency vehicles get in, access your building, how do visitors easily access your building, and I have to park and walk a long distance. So it took a long time to work through all those logistics. This is our 12th rendering. Happy to share all 12 with you, but a lot of thought went into, as I hope you can see, we're not here presenting something and then, playing a shell game or moving things around. This is a lot of thought went into how to keep an operation going at the same token to make it user-friendly for our visitors and especially for our emergency vehicles.
Well, as a commission, when we run up against tough ones, we ask the question, is there an alternative? And I think you just asked that. I mean, answer that question. But was there a close second to this at all?
There was a close second. The close second was, as you see the building hugging, if you will, in a curved shape. The close second was the curve was going in the opposite direction, right? And it was coming out. And that really encroached more on, we felt, on Farm Road. It actually had more overhang on the parking. It made it a little bit more difficult. So that was a close second. But we felt that from an aesthetic standpoint and also an ease of accessibility and wayfinding on the campus, it was nicer to have kind of that C shape, if you will, hug the building. But that was a great question. That was the closest second that we had.
That's more architecture, but what about the wetlands? Any close second on that?
Well, yeah.
From an encroachment standpoint to the
Right.
wetlands,
Right.
any expansion of the building, our target, as you've heard from a few times now, is we needed a 30-bed expansion. So regardless of the configuration of the building, that parking expansion along the southern, or what would be the western side of the building, is going to be in any type of alternate. The only alternate to that is nothing, and that obviously is not, that's obviously doesn't work for the project. So it really is necessitated on that.
This is the least invasive. Like there was a couple of early ones that had a driveway going around the whole building, all the way around the back.
Oh yeah.
And This was the least invasive.
Yeah, if you couldn't hear, Leo, one of the options to your question had the driveway and a roadway going around the entire building. The second is, we heard from our neighbors and I think from the town, we wanted to do more, not only our part, our share, but if we could upgrade and hold back even more water to do that. So this, for us, it was the least invasive, if you will, on the wetlands area, and trying to keep the parking as close to upfront as we possibly could.
And Tom Cross, for the record, also the proposed site wall. If you were out on the site walk, Land Tech had the stakes out there where the wall is located. It actually is just right adjacent to an existing service road that goes back to that the sewer manhole, and that's also used for potential emergency as well. So we tried to respect that edge and not go any further than we had to.
So Angela Jameson, for the record, obviously it's a complicated project. You've got a small space to do it in. You've got wetlands. You've got this. You've got that. And we've received a very detailed memo from the town's engineer, Maria Coplet, where she makes a number of comments and raises questions. So I think it would be good perhaps to just hear from Maria to summarize her thoughts and to see whether we have at this stage any responses to the questions that she posed.
She's gonna squeeze in.
Two gentlemen, thank you. Maria Coplet, for the record. My comment memo, while extensive, if you think about it, it's actually taking the project to the next step, which would be a building permit. So the items in my letter by no means are anything that I noted that would be a detriment to the project to adhere to. And it is my understanding from the applicant that they actually don't have concerns with being able to respond to those comments. Really, it's basically my request to get on record their plans, documenting sewer reports, stormwater management, understanding that the proximity to that wall, just want a structural engineer to be able to evaluate that for hydrostatic pressure. So I don't have any concerns. I just wanted it all written out there so we do get a response that's on record.
Thank you. And does the applicant have any response at this point?
We actually did, and I understand the late nature of the response, but we did actually respond to all of Maria's comments, and I did have a conversation with her earlier in the day, just to touch base on some of the things. We have no objection to any of the comments that she's raised. Frankly, a lot of them, like she said, it is to a benefit of the project. Most of them are, detail or plan call out related, which are easily addressed, which we have, and you'll see tomorrow, you'll have a nice updated package, plans and drainage report, and O&M report was one of the other requests that we've responded to as a part of her comment letter. There was only a couple of items that we intend to respond to that, just given the timing of tonight's hearing to the comments, that we would need more time to respond to, and I think it's appropriate that it would be something that could be considered as a condition of approval. The first piece being the sanitary sewer report. We've prepared the flow analysis of it, but there was some, I think I mentioned this earlier, there were some requests for operation logs and things of that nature that I've reached out to the company that services the pump station, but he just needs a little bit of time to compile that information. The certification of the wall is another. I have no objection to that. We'll have to get a structural engineer involved, prior to a building permit anyway. It is a wall that will require a building permit because it's over 4 feet in height. So we're happy to provide that certification to the town to the approval of DPW. And then the other two pieces, just bear with me a moment, is the accessible route plan. All of our accessible routes as far as parking space, ADA parking spaces and sidewalks to the building, all are within tolerance of ADA. But as far as a highlighted plan, we can provide that under separate coverage. Just timing wise, we just didn't have an opportunity to put that together. And then we talked about as well, the logistics plan, you know, that's going to evolve. You know, generally speaking, what you saw, that's what we're looking at. But, you know, there were some specific details that were requested, which we're happy to provide. It's just some of these things just take a little bit of time to complete, but I don't think it has any impact on the development.
Yep.
So I just want to wrap what you just said there. So these are Maria's, Kurt and I also talked about Maria's memo and, you know, kind of where we are in the inland wetland review process. I think you guys did a great presentation tonight. So thank you for spelling that all out. And it's a little complicated with Anthony wanting to fill in that pond back there, but we'll get there. I think that looks good. The key thing is the two statements that you made, that your limit of construction is your limit of construction. So even your logistics plan is going to be within the limit of construction. Correct. So there's no additional impacts to wetlands that I see from any of these items that Maria has raised in her memo. A lot of these things can be incorporated as part of the building permit application packet and should be and will be as part of the construction documents. So this is great information. I don't know how additional information is going to impact wetlands review. So just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if what you're thinking right now as far as.
Well, maybe we should ask commission members whether they believe that we've heard sufficient to come to a vote, and if so, whether there should be any particular special conditions. What is everyone's thoughts on this?
I'm curious what professional staff thinks.
Well, I could just say, in part, I think I did put this in the email. As the applicant said, they notified not everyone within 100 feet, but everyone within 500 feet of the application. I have not received one inquiry or concern regarding this application. I think they also did a yeoman's job in reaching out to the neighbors and kind of giving the neighbors the lay of the land of what's going to happen at the particular site. Speaking specifically for wetland impacts, this job is all about management. So the construction management and the oversight that's going to have to happen with the activities that they're going to be doing at the site is going to be the key ingredient to success. I think, Kurt, you said that the retaining wall will be sort of one of the first features that gets done. That's smart, you know, that provides that barrier, and then they work in from that. But, you know, it's just really, this is a logistics plan that I think they have well thought out to this level. The creativeness of, you know, the now tired man-made pond in the back and a safety feature and everything else that's happening with that, mosquito attracting and whatnot. The recreation of a wetlands adjacent to a higher function wetlands seems like a pretty plausible, reasonable use of the property and improvement to that area with invasive plant removal, the native plants that Anthony described. So it's also, you know, a vista and a view, you know, off that back area that leads into the hillside there, which is can be quite pretty. So if you were to do a special condition, certainly incorporate the comments in the town engineer's memo is the first possible special condition. Typically, we also ask for an as-built of the construction. They'll have to do that anyway as part of their their project. Maria's memo does cover quite a number of things, so I think we're capturing quite a bit in that regard.
Angela? And this is Dan. My comment is that the Waveney Care Center has a great name in New Canaan and in the community, and they're very respective. And I guess I'm a little puzzled. I mean, I was taken back by this because I hadn't heard this was in the works. But the thing that I am thinking about is with that great reputation, 30 parking places doesn't seem like a lot, quite frankly. And I can imagine them coming back to us relatively soon and asking for more. And maybe somebody wants to comment on that. I don't know.
Leo Carl, again, resident and board member at Waveney. I think the one thing I'll point out to you, Dan, is that we're adding 30 rooms, but the people staying in those 30 rooms don't have cars on site. They're not going to be driving to their room. So the 30 rooms will generate a number of visitor cars during the day or week, but they're not all going to be there at the same time. So there's a few more staff. The parking that's at Waveney, you can always find that one exception when you drive in and there's not one space left, but for the 98% of the time, there's excess parking capacity on that campus. And this, the way the parking is laid out now, it will flow much better. It's safer navigating on the site from one side to the other. Right now, there's some sort of strange curves getting from one side to the other. And we think having the drive-in drop-off area separated from the cross-campus traffic, the way it flows should be much safer. So I think this is not it's not a hotel where you have 30 rooms that have 30 cars coming in to stay there. So I know it meets the zoning requirements as it is.
All right.
I would also add, we've done a parking count and
Yeah,
actually
that's-
2 traffic studies as well. And then people who have driven by Farm in Old Stamford Road, you saw what I call the garden hoses over the street. And we've counted parking spaces throughout the year. We wish that there were more visitors that came in and visited our residents, but sadly, we have some that don't get very much visitation at all. We really are their family, and we embrace that. But 30 spaces for 30 private rooms is plenty of spaces for the visitors that they would have during the day, including our increased staffing.
And to Mr. Barksdale's earlier comments, and to your question, Mr. Stepanek, it doesn't meet the entire demand. I mean, there's a great need in our community for more. This is a small step toward meeting that demand, but to keep in mind that the site that we're on is very constrained. The high school next door, have to be mindful of height, have to be mindful of coverage. We comply with all those things with some modifications to the text, which we'll be addressing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. One thing to mention, though, to Dan's comment, is that I think the commission is going to take a look at the Waveney zone. They didn't do it as part of the POCD, but I think they're going to take a look at it in the future. It really hasn't been looked at all, except when things have been done at the high school, and whether things can be modified there to give us a little bit more elbow room. But it's a tight site, and there's only so much that we can do. And I don't think anyone wants a looming building going up to 50 feet, you know, with the lovely high school next door and the fields there. That wouldn't make any sense at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is Angela Jameson. So are we ready to come to a vote on this particular application? If so, would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Adam Ramirez. Once your microphone is on.
I'd like to make a motion to accept application IW 2448 as submitted with any special conditions from Kathleen.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sandy Redson, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Aye. Very good. Anybody opposed? Dan, did you raise your hand?
I did. I raised my left hand.
Sorry. Oh, it wasn't caught on camera.
No, it
So
wasn't, but,
here we are. His hand is
I
raised.
get a bad shoulder.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No, I'm
sorry.
kidding.
So
You need to stay on rehab, stay at Waveney.
very good. So the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you so much for your time and for a great presentation. We really appreciate
job.
it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very
Best
much. Thank you,
presentation
Kyle.
of the night. I have to say. Not supposed to have favorites. so. Thank you.
So, members of the commission, we do have a few additional agenda items. And so next up, agent report, administrative actions. Kathleen, anything very much you want to mention here?
Just a couple items, then we'll get you out of here. 2 wetland permits were issued over the last month for some activities there. You can read those yourself. The last thing I wanted to mention is we do have another training opportunity, or one that we've mentioned before. Both Angela and Sandy are registered for this. This is a Zoom offering. That was the Connecticut Bar Association Land Use Law for Municipal Land Use Agencies. If anyone else is interested in Zooming into this, it's March 22nd, 9 to 4:30. You get this big manual and really great information. I'm happy to you get you registered, so just contact the office and let us know if that's something you'd like to do. Not required, but a good, you guys have done it before, I think, so.
Yeah, no, it's certainly worthwhile. Okay, and anybody want to raise anything else? So may I hear the final motion of the evening, please?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Wonderful.
I second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Maria, for staying so late.
Thank you.
Very nice.
It was worth it.